The Blast from Our Past Network.
Lock your doors, close your windows, turn out your lights, for chills and thrills await you. It's time for Podcasting After Dark with your hosts, Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer. Stay with a friend, say your prayers as grisly ghouls close in to seal your doom. Tonight's episode, Fletch, starring Chevy Chase, Dana Wheeler, and Tim Matheson. Strangers in the night, exchanging clothing.
Strangers in my pants. Surprise!
Surprise! What's up, everybody? It is me, John Cocktoastin, and joining me, as always, is my beautiful, bodacious co-host that I don't want to sit next to on a plane. It's Mr. Sinalinin. Nah, just kidding. Just kidding, everybody. Hey, this could be quite possibly the most mainstream movie we have ever done in the history of Podcasting After Dark. It is me and Sleazy C breaking down 1985's Fletch.
It's funny you say that, man. I was just watching that fun little 20-minute featurette on the Kino Lorber Blu-ray that's like it was a copy of an older DVD extra. But they were talking to a bunch of people in the movie, and I forgot his name, but the guy that plays Gummy talks about how this is kind of a cult movie and how, it's really popular with the college kids and all that kind of stuff. And that got me thinking, because I think of Fletch as probably a mainstream movie, but on the street, like man on the street. If you ask somebody like what their like Chevy Chase movies are, like maybe what their favorite is, or just to rattle off a couple, they're going to say like Christmas Vacation or National Lampoon's Vacation. But do you think they're going to say Fletch? Or do you think they're going to say like Funny Farm?
Oh, God. If they say Funny Farm, then they need to be checked into a Funny Farm. No offense. And that's, I guess, that term doesn't track very well in today's society, I suppose. Well, whatever. But yeah, like no way. If they say Cops and Robertsons, then they might need to be punched in the face.
I know.
Like
if they say Memoirs of an Invisible Man, punch them in the face.
Yeah, step on their foot, then punch them in the face. If you're gonna kick them in the shin, but you're kind of aiming for their crotch like they do in this movie at one point in the movie. No, I mean, is this a cult movie? No way. I don't think this is a cult movie at all. However, I think it has a strong, devoted following. And the people who love it, really love it. So does that make it cultish? Cult adjacent. How about that?
There you go. And Zach, do you love Fletch?
I've watched Fletch probably almost back in the day, I was watching it every single day on cable or VHS. I probably rented it from the video store several dozen times over the course of my childhood. I never saw it in the theater.
No.
Wish I could have. Would have loved it. But my God, I'm so happy I have like a nostalgic vibe for this movie. And that's why I chose it to be like the summer film. You know, it's my birthday month. So I thought, let's do something that's more like, I don't know, outside the box from Podcasting After Dark. We've done Adventures of Ford Fairlane. I feel like that was also kind of a birthday pick for me. It was something maybe in June, perhaps.
Maybe it was. Maybe, yeah. And then I did The Burbs one summer. I've been sort of handling all the Patreon picks, so I haven't really gotten a chance to throw my hat into the
Corey's
summer
like,
ring.
Corey's like, can we do something of mine? Oh, Fletch is close enough, so
yeah.
I love that movie.
Well, the funny thing is, you and I have been literally quoting this movie on air for the past 5 years. It's near and dear to both of our hearts. Although I don't think you and I have ever watched it together, though, have we?
No. In fact, the last time I did watch it, I watched it with a bunch of people that I don't consider friends. In fact, I don't consider them at all. And it was such a bummer because they're like, "Oh, this is the greatest movie," and I'm like, "I don't even like you people." So now I watched it 3 times in the past 4 days, and I was so happy to see Femme French, my wife, chuckle at certain scenes, and one particular actor, she says, "Oh, she's really good." So yeah, this brought back all the nostalgic feels for you, I'm sure, as well, right, Corey?
Yeah, dude. I mean, same as you, man. I didn't see it in the theater because I was 7. And I didn't I didn't go see a lot of comedies in the theater with my dad. So I mean, that's obviously a dad thing. He just didn't take me to them. We didn't rent too many comedies, although he loved Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I do specifically remember my dad laughing his ass off when they go between the two trucks. But Fletch is just one of those movies that's been in my life forever. You and I have discussed it, multiple times, where you were both big Chevy Chase fans of a certain era of Chevy Chase movies. And I love Chevy Chase, one of my favorite comedians, especially of this era. Let's admit it, coked out Chevy Chase is the Chevy Chase we all like,
Yeah, this is the best version of Chevy Chase.
Yeah.
Tan, coked out.
Yeah, and he's in good shape, too. I mean, I actually made a note of that when he's wearing his tank top. He's actually in damn good shape.
With his pepperoni nipples.
I have a nostalgic love for this movie, but, I don't remember the first time I ever watched it. It's just been in my life forever. Now, my wife and I have a wonderful relationship, and we're lucky that we have so much in common. We're both massive Star Wars fans. We're both massive Ghostbusters fans. One of the biggest things in my life is Seinfeld. She hates Seinfeld. She also hates Chevy Chase. I tried showing this to her years ago. Not a single laugh, nary a chuckle came out of her. And I was like, oh, man. So I have not had this in rotation, nor have I had Seinfeld in rotation outside of doing it for Cartwright much since we've gotten married. But you know what? That's okay. I love my wife and I love my marriage.
Well, you're welcome, Corey, and I'm sorry, Myra. So there you go.
So yeah, so it's great. And the closest thing Zach and I have ever come to watching this movie together was he texted me today when he was breaking it down, a quote from the movie, and I said, "Oh, I just watched that scene." So we were kind of neck and neck where we were as I was taking notes. So you know what? I'll count that, dude. We've seen this movie together.
We have seen this movie together. I'll count that as well. I'll also tag on to this that Justin from $2 Late Fee, when I told him that we were covering this movie, it's one of his favorite movies of all time. He said, "Oh, please don't break that movie down." He goes, I said, "Why?" He goes, it's gonna ruin it for you. You're not gonna like it. I go, "Well, I don't agree." He goes, "Trust me, it's gonna ruin the experience for you. It's gonna ruin that movie for you." Will it? Did it? You'll find out at the end of this breakdown. I do also really quickly want to point out, too, that this movie is celebrating its birthday. At the time we're actually recording this, it had just turned, I believe, 39 years old.
Yeah.
so
Chevy Chase actually made a post about it, yeah.
Yeah, he just, tagged on something that said celebrating the 30th anniversary. So, Chevy Chase or his kid most likely just reposted a picture of a crappy DVD edition of the Fletch poster, because it's not even a poster. It's the pressings we hate. They do it with all 80s comedies when they get released on DVD. It's just a terrible what do you call it? Clip art version of, Adobe Photoshop.
Bachelor Party's Blu-ray's the same way. It's fucking horrible.
That's what I thought. Yeah. We're going to make it look like American Pie or whatever.
Yeah.
No, the old school poster of this with Fletch holding up his wallet, which shows all his different identities. That is in a slipcase cover courtesy of Kino. I will pimp out Kino. I will toot their horn till the cows come home. I will do it forever, because they are not only a relatively inexpensive Blu-ray company and 4K company, they are also really supportive of $2 Late Fee's fundraiser that we do every September for Momentum Wheels for Humanity. They are happily donating. They happily donate Blu-rays and DVDs to that fundraiser. So go out and buy the Kino edition of this. If you want to get Fletch Lives just to have the two, go for it. I'm not a huge fan. I did see that one in the theater. I've probably seen it a handful of times since then. Maybe it's aged better because it's more nostalgic now, but I didn't like it back in the day.
I've probably only seen Fletch Lives once or twice, which is, I guess, the same amount of times I've seen Funny Farm. I don't remember loving it. I know I didn't love Funny Farm, except for he pulls the eel out of the water when he's fishing or something was funny.
Those balls were funny. The when he's eating the Rocky Mountain oysters, that was kind of a funny scene.
That was kind of funny too. But yeah, anyways, yeah, Fletch Lives, man. I honestly, I don't remember jack shit about it. So at this point, I'll just say I haven't fucking seen it because I can't even recall an iota about it. I kind of wanted to watch that John Hamm Fletch movie, and it's not a remake because these are all based on novels, and my understanding is that Fletch, the John Hamm one, is just, a different novel, and, he's not doing a Chevy Chase, he's just doing his interpretation of, Fletch from the book, which I find intriguing. If it was just a remake of Fletch, I wouldn't want to see it, but that kind of, it gets me a little intrigued, but I was probably more excited for a new Fletch when back in the day when it was Kevin Smith talking about doing it with Jason Lee, because I think he would have fucking pulled it off.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I didn't see that new John Hamm one. I'm not averse to it. I just haven't at the time. I've seen the Fletch Lives fairly recently, I'd say in the past 5 years. And I remember liking moments of it. His co-star in that, she used to be married to Bruce Springsteen. I'm blanking on her name right now. I remember her kind of being annoying. Fletch looks different, like obviously we all change, but it's like more clean Chevy Chase. So he's just like not as funny. I don't know. I do want to quickly give a shout out to Fletchcast. They're I am Fletchcast. They are all things Fletch. They have had people on their show, actors from the movie, on their podcast.
Wow.
Really, really nice guys. I've interacted with them a handful of times on Instagram, and they do a fun podcast. So there's your cheap free plug.
Okay. Oh, didn't even know they existed. I'll go check them out. I can always use more Fletch in my life. And before we get into the cast and crew, one last question I have for you, buddy. Have you ever read any of the novels? My answer, no. So
my answer being no as well, simply because it's not Chevy Chase. And I'll bring it up now. Chevy improvised a lot of lines in this film, a lot of scenes. They just kind of went with it. So that's the charm of this movie. I don't need to see a detective, undercover reporter detective type story. I don't need that. It's not my bag, Chevy Chase makes this movie. If there's no Chevy Chase, we're not breaking this movie down. Right.
And I've heard that he's Irwin Fletcher is sarcastic in the book, but he's a little bit more mean and cynical sarcasm, whereas Chevy Chase is a bit more, some of it's lighthearted, some of it's a little cynical, but it's cynical with a touch of lightheartedness.
Yeah, and I've heard that the John Hamm version is closer to the book.
The book, yeah.
And I like John Hamm. I think he's a tremendous actor.
He's actually a good comedian. He has a good comic timing as well.
Yeah, he's really funny. And if you want to see him play an unbelievable asshole, watch the latest season of Fargo, because he is everything that is relevant in today's political spectrum that I would hope that most of us loathe.
Yes.
So
interesting. Okay.
Woo boy. All right. Well,
all right.
Again. Okay. So let's get into it really quickly. Casting crew directed by Michael Fletch, directed by Michael Ritchie. Besides this, he directed The Golden Child, and he also directed Wildcats.
Yes, Wildcats, bro. He also directed Bad News Bears as well.
The original?
Yeah, the 1970 was something, whatever it is, 76, 79. Yeah, 76, the original, Bad News Bears.
Amazing. Yeah, Michael Ritchie is one heck of a talented director. Died in 2001 at the age of 62.
Yeah, and for a lot of listeners to this podcast, will probably be happy to know that he also directed Student Bodies in 1981, that comedy horror film.
Yeah, he's a really capable director. He's done some solid movies. Golden Child is decent. I highly recommend rewatching that because it's got some moments. Great song by Ann Wilson of Heart, by the way.
Yeah, no, that was a movie that I used to adore as a kid, and I probably watched it within the last 5 years, and I was like, this isn't that great. But you did bring up Cops and Robertsons. He directed that.
Moving on. It's based on the novel by Gregory MacDonald, but Andrew Bergman and Phil Alden Robinson wrote the screenplay. Andrew Bergman, known for Blazing Saddles, baby.
Yeah.
So there's one. By the way, Blazing Saddles, 3/4 of that movie, amazing. The last quarter where they go through the Hollywood sets and it like kind of the movie breaks down, not so great.
That's kind of why it's not one of my favorite Mel Brooks movies. I love it, but as a kid, I kind of disconnected during that part. And I never understood it. And it's kind of weird because I almost sometimes feel that way about the climax of this movie. The very last scene, it feels a little bit different than the rest of the movie tonally, but not terrible, but it's just interesting how that happens sometimes.
It is interesting. They're look, this film is not perfect, and we'll call out some flaws too. But yeah, no, I agree with you on that. He also wrote Honeymoon in Vegas, which is a personal favorite of mine when it comes to romantic comedies. Is it Kapa-a-a or Kapa-a-a-a?
I haven't seen that one in forever.
Anyways, he's written actually quite a few tremendous comedies in the 80s and 90s. Phil Alden Robinson, oh baby, we will cover another mainstream movie down the road, guaranteed. He wrote Sneakers.
Oh, yes.
He didn't just write it. He directed Sneakers. So we will definitely cover Sneakers. That is one of my all-time favorite movies. I gave it a shout-out in the newest episode of $2 Late Fee when we cover Cloak and Dagger. I said Cloak and Dagger, if you took two Dabney movies, Dabney Coleman spy movies, Cloak and Dagger, Man with One Red Shoe, and two Robert Redford spy movies, 3 Days of the Condor and Sneakers. There's your foursome, for the night. Because like 3 Days of the Condor and Cloak and Dagger are very similar in their kind of vibe.
Yeah.
And then, anyways, Sneakers, amazing. I know you love that movie. He also directed Field of Dreams too, which is classic.
Yeah, I'm not that big of a fan of Field of Dreams, but I love Sneakers.
Well, we all have our faults.
I'm not a big baseball movie guy.
I know you're not.
My favorite baseball, I love Major League. He's going to need a rocket up his ass to catch that one. But I'd say my favorite baseball movies, League of Their Own.
Not Bad News Bears?
Never seen it.
What? Oh, you
Moving
gotta
on.
see that. Yeah, it's funny. As much as like I love baseball movies and I love to watch baseball, I suck at baseball.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be good at it. I wanted to be good. Yeah, I'll shout out the cinematographer. It's Fred Schuler, who has no photo. He's worked on a lot of tremendous movies like Dog Day Afternoon, Arthur, Taxi Driver. As a cinematographer, Haunted Honeymoon, which is a fun Woody, what do you call it?
Oh God,
Gene Wilder and
fuck.
Oh my God.
God damn it.
Gilda Radner movie.
And what's his name? Fucking
Dom DeLuise.
Dom DeLuise. I have it on Blu-ray. Fucking Bert sent it to me. I think it was one of those like dead dad movies when I was going through a rough patch. He just sent me a bunch of movies to kind of get me through my dead dad phase. So thanks for that one, Bert. I haven't watched it yet, but I loved that one as a kid, and I'm a big Dom DeLuise fan.
Yeah, let me know how it is and if it's kid friendly, because that's a movie I want to show Bodie if it is, because I remember loving that as a kid as well.
Yeah.
Why don't you shout out the editor for this? Who is the editor for this?
Yeah, Richard A. Harris. He worked, of course, he edited some of the director's movies like The Island, Michael Ritchie stuff, The Island, and whatnot, and Bad News Bears. But he also, and Golden Child, but he was also the editor on Titanic, True Lies, The Bodyguard, and T2 Judgment Day.
Moving on. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, amazing. That's quite
Right?
a resume. That's quite
the resume. And which it shows because that chase scene at the end is very well edited.
Yeah, it really is. The chase scene is well edited. Yeah, this movie actually is really well edited. I would say 3/4 of it. But there are definitely moments where you're like, oh, that was an interesting shot. Oh, that was useless. Like him driving in the car for some reason. And we're like, oh, we're just going to watch Chevy driving in the car listening to the radio for no reason. So that will not be in this breakdown, by the way.
Yeah.
Or maybe it will be. We'll find out. There's a $50 bill in my wallet, but then again, maybe there isn't. I got to shout out the composer because he's one of my all-time favorite composers, Harold Faltermeyer, known for Beverly Hills Cop, Top Gun, Fletch. I mean, right there, 3 movies with 3 killer scores. Thief of Hearts is a terrible movie, but it has one of the best synth wave scores. He
also did Midnight Express, American Gigolo.
Yeah, Midnight Express. That doom 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 doom. That was the theme song for the Midnight Express tag team back in the day. And man, yeah, good stuff. Harold Faltermeyer. I think he's from Europe. Yeah, he's German.
Oh, okay.
Tremendous dude. Tremendous resume as well.
And he's still working today because he's working on the new Axel Foley movie, Beverly Hills Cop, Axel F. I don't understand.
Oh boy.
That.
Yeah.
Why don't they call it Axel Foley? Why do they do Axel F?
I don't know. I have a bad feeling about that movie.
I got a bad feeling about this drop. You always say that, Frost. You always say I got a bad feeling about this drop.
Yeah, they should have stopped after 2 because 2 was decent. I remember everybody's like, "Oh, 2's so great." It's okay. It's okay.
I don't know if I've ever seen 3.
3 is terrible. It's set at, and it's terrible for me personally because it was filmed at Great America in Santa Clara in the Bay Area.
What
an
is
amusement
that?
park up there. It's an amusement park.
Okay.
And it's set in an amusement park. It's just so bad. It's just, I'm not, actually kind of good that we bring it up because Chevy Chase and Eddie Murphy, like same trajectory career wise, like they had so many terrible films. Then Chevy's career seemed to kind of get a boost when he did Community. And I know Eddie, when he did that Dolomite movie, got a lot of good press for that. But I mean, come on, guys. Go back to your roots. Go back to snorting cocaine and messing around. No,
well, one thing is definitely different about the trajectory. Eddie Murphy looks a lot better than Chevy Chase does right now.
True. Okay. So really quick, cast. Chevy Chase, y'all know who he is. Do we need to say anymore? No.
You know what? What is your, aside from Fletch, what's your favorite Chevy Chase movie? And you can't say Memoirs of Invisible Man.
No. Well, again, I would say like the first half of Spies Like Us is amazing. Then the rest of it sucks. I'm going to go with National Lampoon's Vacation.
Yeah, because, I mean, like Caddyshack, I don't ever think, he's in it, but he's not like the main character. He's not even in it that much. I was never the biggest Three Amigos fan growing up.
Same.
Spies Like Us, you and I quote doctor all the time, but I'm with you. I have so much more fun in that movie in the first half than I do the second half. So honestly, Vacation. Yeah. I think it's consistent all the way through. I think it's a great fucking movie.
I agree. I'm going to not go with IMDb's order. I'm going to go with the actual order of the movie. Tim Matheson plays Alan Stanwyck. Mr. Stanwyck! Not Mrs. Stanwyck. Tim Matheson, I think most people will know him from Animal House.
Yeah, filmed up here in Eugene, Oregon. The Animal House fraternity is not there anymore, but their rivals, the house next door, is still there, so you can still see that. But yeah, and for me, that's where I sort of know him from. I mean, I know he's been in other things like The West Wing and stuff like that, but honestly, I didn't watch a lot of that stuff. I know him from Animal House.
Yeah, it's like Robert Hayes in Airplane. You're like, oh, Robert Hayes was in all these other things. Yeah, but you know him from Airplane,
Exactly. Yep.
He's the white guy with the dark hair. Dana Wheeler-Nicholson, because she's married, plays Gail Stanwyck. She was in Tombstone, Circuitry Man with our boy Vernon Wells from Mad Max. And, many other projects, but I think most people will recognize her from Tombstone, maybe Circuitry Man. Our audience will recognize her from Circuitry Man.
Yeah, honestly, man, she's always going to be Maddie Earp to me from Tombstone. I love Tombstone. Saw it in the theater. Loved it then. Love it now. I need that on Blu-ray. I actually don't have it. Maybe there'll be a 4K coming out. But yeah, every time, and of course, when I saw that movie, I was like, oh, it's from Fletch. But that's really the only thing I know her from.
Yeah, I think she was the highlight for my wife. I think Femme French was like, oh, she's really funny, especially in the tennis scene in the beginning.
She is. I mean, I think she's actually really good in this movie, like comedy-wise. And obviously she's been working forever. She's got a bunch of credits under her name. But like, I would have thought she would have been a bigger name in comedy, because I thought she nailed it.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like she should have been on. Well, she would probably agree with us, but I feel like she should have been on more in more movies back in the 80s.
Yeah.
Joe Don Baker plays Chief Carlin. I mean, Joe Don Baker. He's Buford T. Pusser from oh God, what's that movie called? I'm blanking, but it'll come to me. Hold on.
So Walking Tall?
Walking Tall. That's a great movie. And Joysticks, which just came out on MVD.
Yeah, I finally got mine. I had to return the first one and got this one, although I don't think I got it for the same price as I got the first one for.
No.
And my box is a little bit more dinged than my first one was. Man, that's always going to be thorn in my side.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Don Baker is kind of a legend. He's been in everything.
Yeah, from Joysticks to The Living Daylights to Leonard Part 6.
It's so funny. I was thinking the same thing, but I'm like, I'm not going to talk about Randy Cosby. Wait, whoa, Randy Cosby.
Hold on. Leonard Part 6 and Ghost Dad, 2 movies I saw in the theater.
And I'm sorry. You'll never get your money back. He plays Chief Carlin with a K. Richard Libertini plays Walker. He's Fletch's editor at the newspaper that he works at. He's been in a lot of things. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2016. Joe Don Baker passed away in... Wait, Joe Don Baker's still alive. Oh, shit. Roll that back and delete it. Unfortunately passed away in 2016 at the age of 82. It's a pretty good run, in my opinion. But everything from Popeye, he was a voice in DuckTales, the movie. Overrated. Clap, clap, clap. That movie. Because everyone's like, oh, DuckTales, the movie, it's so good. No, it's the TV show's better.
You know what was good? Duckman. He did a voice on that.
He sure did. I mean, he actually, has quite a few decent voice acting credits under his belt as well. He's great.
He is, but every time I see him in anything, I think of Fletch.
Yes, I agree. There's a couple other actors that we'll point out, and then there's many notable kind of cameos through this, so we will name them when they come up because they're only in like one scene. But George Wendt plays Fat Sam. George Wendt, from Cheers and House.
Yeah.
Oh, and Dreamscape. And
Dreamscape. Yeah, we saw him in Dreamscape. What I was thinking when I was watching this, I kind of hit me. I feel like this is the only time I've ever seen George Wendt do a character. Like, he's kind of doing a voice. He's kind of doing a character. Everything else is just Norm to me. Like every other character he plays is just Norm. Whereas here, he's actually trying to do something.
Yeah, I agree. He's kind of playing against type.
Yeah, and I like it. I like him in Fletch. I've always liked the Fat Sam character.
Yeah. Another guy who's not playing against type, and you had mentioned him earlier, is Larry Flash Jenkins, who plays Gummy. He was in Prison. Do you remember him in Prison? We loved him in Prison.
Of course I do. Yep. We did that all the way back in season 1, guys and gals. Go listen to that episode. I'm sure when we talked about him in the movie, we talked about he was Gummy in Fletch. But yeah, he was. He got cooked. He was the one that got cooked in the cell.
Yes. Yeah. Whew. He got Gummy.
He did.
Ralph Seymour plays Creasy. He's one of Ralph Seymour, who plays Creasy, and Gummy are two homeless guys who kind of work with. They're around Fat Sam. We'll get to that in a minute. But Ralph Seymour, I recognize him from Pee-wee's Big Adventure.
Yep, and he was also in The Relic.
Oh, yeah, and The Relic as well. Yeah, love that.
That's a movie we're going to cover one day as well. I thought that was supposed to come out on Blu-ray like years ago.
It was, so I don't know what the hell is going on with that, but it needs to come out stat. I need me some Relic.
Yeah, that was the only reason we haven't covered it yet. I fucking love that movie, is because there's kind of no good version of it, and we were just waiting for the Blu-ray that was supposed to come out in like 2020 or 2019 or something.
Yeah, fun little side note. When I went up to Seattle recently and visited my friend Bob Lindemeyer, who is making the Megaforce documentary, he has a whole cavalcade of movie memorabilia in his home. And one of the things he has in there is a actual model that was used on set of the monster in The Relic.
Oh man, that's awesome. I saw that in the theater, man. I had such a blast watching that movie.
Dude, me too. Human hypothalamus? Oh,
and
Jesus.
Wasn't your boy Clayton Roner's in
Clayton Roner, my boy Clayton Roner's in that, and Tom Sizemore when he was cool, and
back when he was fucking cool.
oh
Yep,
my God,
yep.
Penelope Ann Miller before she went off to Cuckoo Train Town, and all of course, yeah.
Oh
yeah.
man.
So,
yeah.
well, enough fiddling around with our jelly fingers. Why don't we get into, or literally, let's get into Fletch.
Ah, for God, Don.
What is this man saying?
Bueno, señor Duncan, frente siglo.
What is this man doing?
What in the hell's the matter with you?
What is this man's name?
My name is Igor Stravinsky.
Hi there, I'm Harry S. Truman.
I'm Don Corleone.
They call him Fletch.
Fletch, F. Fletch.
He's good at defending himself,
Better tie your shoelaces.
disguising himself, and getting himself into trouble.
Well, it be Fletch. Go ahead. Make my day.
He's a reporter
There are no tags on these mattresses.
who's about to write the story of a lifetime,
Will you kill me? Sure.
if he lives.
Thanks a lot.
There isn't a woman he can't charm,
Can I borrow your towel for a sec? My car just hit a water buffalo.
a question he won't ask,
You and your wife are currently alive, I take it?
Drop your shorts and bend over, Mr. Babar.
a risk he won't take,
Probably feel 100% Moon River.
to get to the truth.
It looks like you two have a lot to talk over. We'll just catch the last 10 minutes of Dynasty.
Universal Pictures presents Chevy Chase as Fletch.
Welcome to it.
Bit by bit, one way or another, bit by bit, undercover, brother.
What? Would you say, because this opening credit scene, by the way, it's the entire song over the credits, and it's just the credits. There's no, like, the scenes don't start until after the song is over and the credits finish rolling. Would you say that this is one of the few movies that does that makes you want to actually sit through the entire credits just to listen to the song?
Yeah, no, because Bit by Bit, played by or sung by Stephanie Mills. It's a fun song. It's it's the Fletch theme. It was made for this movie, and yeah, dude, it's a poppy, fun song that gets it going. And then right after the song cuts out, you get into that great composition, the dun 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 like that. So so which one is like the Fletch theme? Is it the Bit by Bit? And I know that's considered the Fletch theme, but I think of Fletch's theme being like the musical note or whatever.
Well, Bit by Bit is Fletch's song, and then I think the Harold Faltermeyer score. I mean, that's Fletch's soundtrack as well, but that Bit by Bit is really Fletch's song.
Okay, but
because
yeah,
she
banger,
even says,
man, absolute banger.
Fletch is undercover tonight, and the whole thing. Yeah. So the movie opens with that song, then fades into Fletch on the beach, Santa Monica Beach by the pier, by the way, which in 1985, almost 40 years later, looks a whole hell of a lot different in some ways. However, the homeless population, the drug addict population, pretty much the same, if not doubled, in 2024.
Wow, man, back when I used to
Sadly.
live in Santa Monica, bro, I used to walk because I was on what was it? I was on 14th. I was on 14th, which is just 14 blocks from the beach. Sounds like a long way, but
It's
the
really
way the blocks are, it's not
Downhill.
really. And actually the blocks going that way are shorter than the up and down. You know what I mean? They're kind of shorter that way going towards the beach. But yeah, I used to go down there. I'd fucking get stoned and go down to the beach and just smoke weed and shit like that at like 2 a.m. It was fucking awesome. But yeah, this, man, talk about nostalgia. Like I'm looking at this and I'm like, I know exactly where every single scene is being shot right here.
Yeah, I now living down here in Santa Monica as well. I'm like, oh my God, I know where Fletch's home is. You can go visit it pretty much.
Yeah, no, I think they have it in IMDb, the address. I wrote it down in my notes somewhere, so I'll call it out when we get to that scene. But yeah,
right.
It's 827 4th Street. I know exactly where that is.
Not near the promenade.
Yep.
Yeah, so the movie opens with Fletch on the beach wearing his signature Lakers jersey, and he narrates. He says, "My name is Irwin Fletcher. I write for a Los Angeles paper. You probably read my stuff under the byline of Jane Doe. Hey, what the hey? It's better than Irwin. Last 3 weeks I've been loitering around the beach trying to pass for an amiable minor league junkie. I don't nod out or drool. That's too obvious. Act like you don't give a crap and you fit right in." Pretty accurate. He walks over to Fat Sam's, which is like a shack. There is no shack there now.
No.
The closest thing to it is the hot dog on a stick, which is on the other side of the pier, which is still there, by the way. It's the original hot dog on a stick, and it got bought out by a company, and they like redid it to look exactly like the original. It's just got more like modern amenities and stuff.
Oh yeah, of course. And yeah, Fat Sam's, it's like that parking lot, that main parking lot that if you want to park down at the pier, that's kind of where his, food shack is, or wherever the fuck it is.
You can buy balloons from a dude who hangs out and sells little ice cream bars.
Some
much.
things change, some
Yep.
things stay the same.
Yeah. So Fletch kind of looks around and whistles. And he's like, oh, kind of comments that business has really picked up, being sarcastic. And Fat Sam's like, still closed. And Fletch goes, what is it, a Colombian national holiday? And Fat Sam laughs. And I love this exchange because it's so random. Fletch goes, so what do you figure, Sam? Sam goes, no idea. Fletch goes, no idea at all? Sam goes, some idea. It's just back and forth. And then Sam goes, I got some reds.
Fletch goes, you don't mean communists, do you, Sam?
By the way, I say that all the time when anyone ever mentions red. And then Sam goes, this is funny because Sam goes, is everything a joke to you? And then Fletch gets up to walk away and he goes, everything, sham. But like the way the ADR is, he like sounds like he's doing this bad Humphrey Bogart impression. Everything, sham. He goes and sees Gummy, who's nearby, and he asks Gummy how his eye is because Gummy's got a big old shiner. Says the cops did it. They're always beating up on me.
Poor Gummy.
Poor Gummy. At the same time, well, some things change, some things never, some things don't. At the same time, Alan Stanwyck, played by Tim Matheson, is watching Fletch in a car with binoculars. He watches Fletch sit down next to Creasy at a fence, and they're having a conversation.
Creasy does not look 19, by the way.
No, but when you're addicted to drugs and on homeless, probably would look that way.
Yeah.
By the way, this flashback, this is kind of weird. It flashed me back to the time I saw Brad Renfro. You remember that actor? He was in the Client, the John Grisham movie. He was the kid.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
Strung out with a needle in his arm in Hollywood at a bus stop.
Oh, shit. Jesus.
Because he died of an overdose, I believe.
Oh, what? Not there. You didn't see him.
No,
that's not
but
him being dead, right?
Soon
oh,
after.
No shit.
I don't know. Brought me back to like seeing homeless young people in Hollywood. It's scary stuff.
Well, I mean, talk about the relic. My buddy Alex used to live in the same apartment complex in downtown LA as Tom Sizemore, and there were a few nights where he came home and had to walk to his apartment and walk over Tom Sizemore's passed out body in the hallway.
Yeah, it's a sad reality of your heroes, who you think they are. You see someone on screen, not exactly. Like our good buddy Crystal apparently is going to go meet Chevy at a convention, and he's probably going to be an asshole. Not to her. But probably to every dude, he'll be an asshole too. So hopefully not to you, Crystal. You don't deserve that. Anyways, Creasy, Fletch says to Creasy, basically saying Sam doesn't know about the drugs, and Creasy's pissed. How come he doesn't know? Son of a bitch. And Fletch says, I wonder how he gets his stuff. Creasy's like, I have no idea. He never leaves the beach, Fat Sam. And they're watching Sam sitting outside his shack. Creasy's like, he never leaves. Sits in the chair. He's out of shit, and suddenly he's got shit. So where's it come from? The sand? Fletch goes, I think that's highly unlikely, Creasy. And then Creasy says, mentions he's got to get some sleep, and that's when Fletch asks him how old he is, and he says 19. Fletch kind of pats his leg. He goes, you're not taking very good care of yourself.
See, he doesn't look 19.
No. From there, you see Fletch get up and walk along the pier, and his narration continues. Fletch says, in case you haven't guessed, there's been a lot of drug traffic on the beach. I'm not talking about Robitussin and no-dose. I'm talking about the hard stuff. Lots of it. I've been trying to figure out who's behind it. Hasn't been easy. I don't shower much. Suddenly,
I love that. Just that pause. And then I don't shower much.
Suddenly, this is going to, by the way, guys, just get used to us laughing while we're talking the whole time because it's just so silly.
I mean, if you listen to our Ford Fairlane or our Burbs or Bachelor Party, anytime we break down a comedy, it's just us quoting the movie.
Exactly. Much. If I'm not doing an impression or Corey's just not, fucking making noises.
People love it, though. I'm not going to lie. We get a lot of feedback on our comedy breakdowns. People love it.
Yeah, because you're literally here with us, right, Lee? Right, Rob? Right? You guys are like literally with us. Fletch is walking under the pier, and he walks right past Alan Stanwyck, who's hiding behind one of the beams. Alan excuses himself and says, I have something I'd like to discuss with you. Fletch says, what's that? He goes, we can't talk about it here. Fletch looks around and he goes, why not? Alan says, because we can't. And Fletch goes, are you on a scavenger hunt? Or did I just forget to pay my dinner check? I mean, I'd be happy to pay. And Alan says, I want you to come to my house, and then we'll talk. And Fletch says, you got the wrong gal, fella. And Alan says, I'll give you $1,000 cash. And Fletch suddenly stops and goes, what? Alan says, just come back to my house, listen to my proposition. If you reject the proposition, you keep the 1,000 and your mouth shut. Fletch says, does this proposition entail me as dressing up as Little Bo Peep? Alan says, it's nothing of a sexual nature, I assure you. Fletch goes, yeah, I assure you.
I assure you.
Alan says, 1,000 just to listen? I don't see how you can pass that up, Mr. Nugent. Ted Nugent.
I love how Alan kind of pauses because he's got to know who Ted Nugent is, but he's like, okay, I'll go.
No, he doesn't. He's a douchebag. He's a douchebag.
True.
Spoiler, he's a total
Well, so
asshole.
is Ted Nugent's a douchebag.
Well, yeah, at this time, Ted Nugent was still kind of cool. Literally the same thing happened to Kid Rock. Kid Rock at one point was like, oh, all American, yeah. And then suddenly became assholes. I know, Diallo, you would disagree that Kid Rock's always been an idiot, but there was a time when he was kind of considered cool to some people that were actually not mangas. Anyways, Alan introduces himself, Alan Stanwyck. And Fletch goes, Alan Charmed. But he says it like he says Ellen. He goes, Ellen Charmed.
See, here's the funny thing is, I always thought he said Ellen, and then I was watching with the subtitles, and it says Alan, and I was like, oh, okay. I wonder though sometimes if the subtitles go off the script, and he might have like ad-libbed it a little bit, and changed it maybe. Maybe Chevy Chase is saying Ellen, but it's supposed to be Alan, so the subtitle. I don't know how those things work.
Me too. I think they go off the script, and I think most of the time, and I think there are definitely times when he says things that are not the same, and we'll call those out throughout the movie.
Or the subtitles don't know what he says, and it just says indistinct, later when he's getting chased by the dog. Now, I will say, I did do one of those inflation calculators, and back in 1985, $1,000 today is worth $3,000.
I mean, to an alleged homeless person, a junkie, that's a lot of cash.
I mean, $1,000 is a lot of cash today.
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. Just to hear a guy out. What's funny is he shakes Alan's hand through his hoodie pocket. So he doesn't take his hand out of his hoodie. He's wearing a hoodie over his jersey, by the way, guys. But he goes to shake Alan's hand through his hoodie, but he doesn't take his hand out. So, which is really funny. And then as they walk away, he goes, for an extra $1,000, I'll let you take me out to dinner. They drive to Alan Stanwyck's home, which looks like Beverly Hills, but it's kind of nondescript. And as they go in, Fletch goes, what a coincidence.
I was this close to buying this place.
Yes. Because then I found out Hopalong Cassidy killed himself here. Blew it for me.
And I love this because Stanwyck will call him Hopalong Cassidy at the end. There's actually, I wrote him down, there's a couple callbacks to this conversation right here. Specifically when fucking Stanwyck says, what are you, doped up now? And Fletch says, don't talk to me like that, ass face. I don't work for you yet. And later on, Stanwyck will call him an ass face.
Yes, yes. So they're walking through the entrance of Alan's beautiful palatial home. They walk past a maid or a, cleaning lady who says buenos dias to both of them. And Fletch goes, Pop and Taco. Which I believe is a restaurant.
One of the few, I think, holes in this movie, because I think this movie is actually very tight and a very tight script, but I don't think Alan would have walked Fletch right past a witness like that his maid. I don't like that was bad planning on Stanwyck's part.
Well, if Stanwyck is kind of like a Trump type douchebag, maybe he doesn't care because his
He's
ego's
arrogant.
like, that guy won't. No one will ever believe her.
Yeah, good point. Good point. And I love when they walk into his office and Fletcher's like, "Oh, good, you remodeled the garage. I bet it costs hundreds."
And then he points at all the diplomas on the wall in this beautiful study.
I
and
should
he
have
goes,
mine framed too.
yeah. And then he asks if the Pope will be in later. I thought that was funny.
Yeah, me too. I did too.
So,
see, guys and gals, if we actually recorded the video for this, you would have seen a couple times where Zach was waiting for me to quote something. He looks at me. I don't say anything, and he just moves on. He's like, all right.
And I'm looking at my iPad with my notes on it, and so I don't always see his facial reactions, but I can hear them. I can hear his facial reactions. You get that? So Alan pulls the money out at his kind of desk in his office. Fletch looks out the window at the back of the office and sees Gail Stanwyck sunbathing by the pool. And at the same time, Alan says, here's my proposition. I want you to murder me. Fletch turns around and looks at him and is kind of surprised. And Alan says, here, on Thursday, I'd like you to shoot me dead. The reason I ask you to do me this service is because I'm already facing a very long, painful, and most certain death. Fletch kind of looks at him suspiciously and Alan says, you see, I have bone cancer. I don't know if you know anything about bone cancer, Mr. Nugent. Fletch raises his hand like he thinks. He goes, it's the worst kind you can get. It just eats you up bit by bit.
Bit by bit, one way or another, the cancer will get you.
Bone cancer, you won't survive.
By the way, side note, the cancer I don't ever want is stomach cancer. I heard that's fucking terrible.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
So,
downer. So, moving on.
So, Fletch goes, you don't look sick, Mr. Nugent, because he doesn't.
I don't feel
Alan
sick.
says, I don't feel sick, not yet, but they tell me it's going to start getting bad in about a month. After that, I'd rather not be around. Fletch says, why don't you try suicide? Alan says, believe me, I thought about it, but my company has taken out a rather large life insurance policy on me. Suicide would nullify my insurance, but murder does not. Fletch goes, why me? Alan says, you're a drifter, pardon the expression, junkie. No one would notice if you disappeared, and I've been watching you for a couple of weeks. Fletch goes, maybe I'm just on vacation. It's not with the scum you hang out with.
And by the way, the reason I know that a life insurance policy won't be paid out on suicides is because, what was that movie with Dabney Coleman where he's a police officer?
Shortchange.
Shortchange, yeah. He's trying to get himself killed because he thinks he has terminal illness and then his wife and kids would be paid out and everything, but he can't die.
Yes. Shout out to the late, great Dabney Coleman and Shortchange, a movie in which Dustin loves, but he hates when the kid sings Roll With Me, Roll With It by Steve Winwood in the car.
I love Steve Winwood, but
so do I, but he does not like that song.
I haven't seen Shortchange in probably since it first came out on HBO,
Not available on Blu-ray, and it's a travesty. Maybe it'll get released finally.
Oh,
Matt Frewer is in that as well, Max Headroom.
Oh, yeah.
Anyways, Alan says, I've come up with an escape plan as well for you. And Fletch goes, swell. Has it ever occurred to you that I might not want to murder you, Stanwyck? And Alan says, I've got $50,000, says you will.
And again, in today's money, that's $150,000.
Yes, and Fletch gets very curious. Alan says, $50,000. Guarantee you won't get caught. Fletch goes, I'm still here. Alan says, I want it done Thursday evening around 8 p.m. My wife will be at her club function, and it's a staff night off. These will be open, and he points to the French doors. French windows or doors, whatever. Fletch goes, will they normally be locked? When they normally be locked? Alan goes, sometimes yes, sometimes no. The staff usually forgets. Fletch says, oh yeah, I have that same problem.
I always thought that was kind of silly dialogue. It's too deep. If Alan should just say, just trust me. But I like how he gets into the minutia of his day-to-day life there for a second.
Me too. That's why I wrote it all down, because I'm like, this is actually really kind of funny, just their exchange.
Even though it's it's done straight, but all of it's funny.
Yeah, because he says, I'll be waiting here for you. The safe will be open. Points to a safe. There'll be $50,000 in there. You'll be wearing rubber gloves. Do you own rubber gloves?
I lease them with an option to buy. As a kid, that's stuff that as a kid, it went over my head. I watch it now, I'm like, genius.
Then Alan points to his drawer in his desk, pulls out the gun. Fletch goes, .357 Magnum. Alan says, my 357. You use it. No one can trace it to you. Of course, the room will be in some disarray. Fletch says, you want it to look like a burglary attempt? You come in and catch me. I'm stealing your ties and your money. We scuffle. Gun gets loose and I shoot you right between the eyes. Alan says, precisely. Alan continues, says, are you a good shot? Fletch goes, yeah, I'm all right. Alan says, well, get me on the first shot if you can. Do you have a passport? Fletch
I
goes,
can dig one up.
Yeah, probably dig one up. Alan says, now good. Now after you kill me, you take the Jaguar. The keys will be in the glove compartment. Fletch says, where? He goes, LAX. Go to the Pan Am desk. There'll be a ticket waiting for you. Where am I going? Rio. Departs at 11 p.m. Fletch says they serve dinner on the flight and a movie and free drinks, Alan says.
Free drinks.
I recommend staying there for at least a year. Fletch goes, you certainly thought this out. And Alan says, I'm not one who leaves a great deal to chance. But Fletch is still kind of nervous. He goes, those will be open, and he points at the windows. Alan says, don't worry about that. Just take care of the gloves, the passport, the aim, and I'll take care of everything else. Fletch says, the gun, the money, the tickets, and the dying. Looks like you get the hard part. Alan says, well, what do you say? You'll be doing my family and I a great service. Will you kill me? Fletch Fletch simply just says,
sure. And it's kind of like, and he kind of has a smile. It's almost like a marriage proposal, you know?
Yeah, I'll do it for you, pal.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Corey here. I just wanted to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages.
Hello, and welcome to BAMPIRE. BAMPIRE is a wildly ambitious, independent horror comedy film.
It is fun, sexy, thrilling, and unpredictable from start to finish.
On the surface, BAMPIRE is a slasher flick set in the 90s.
References Bambi, but it's not just, Bambi, but horror. It's its own thing, and it has a real story to tell.
BAMPIRE is a story that I wrote to encapsulate my own experience growing up in the wilds of Alaska, seeing humankind interact with nature.
So to me, BAMPIRE is just like a fantastic horror comedy, just like a classic kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, early Scream era.
It's also a gore fest that will make you wonder if we took the actors back there and really mauled them like that.
It is going to be so wildly entertaining.
It's visceral, it's energetic, it's emotional, it's popcorn, it's candy. It feels like watching a movie. It's a movie.
And now, back to the show.
Cut to elevator doors opening in a office building. It's the newsroom.
Yeah.
Fletch enters.
Did we ever find out what is it called? Like the LA paper or something? Something so that's not really a paper though, right? Like,
no.
Yeah,
I don't think so. But yeah, I mean, it's supposed to be like the LA Times, but it's not.
Yeah.
Fletch comes in and he's kind of slapping people, giving people high fives, saying hi to everybody. Everybody's excited to see Fletch. He's the talk of the town. Jane Doe.
Well, I think he's kind of the cool guy, too, because a lot of those other ones in there are stiffs, you know? Especially like that old guy that Frank gives the beach story to later on, and Chevy pulls his chair out. But that guy's kind of like a stiff. I think Fletch is supposed to be, he's cool, he's hip, he plays to his own tune, you know? He's the undercover investigator reporter.
Exactly. You're introduced to Larry, and I can't believe I forgot to mention her in the opening credits. We didn't do that. Larry, played by
why, but yeah, so
Gina
Larry
fucking Davis in one of her earlier film roles. Gina Davis, of course, you mentioned League of Their Own. Transylvania 65000.
Transylvania 65000.
Long Kiss Goodnight.
Long Kiss Goodnight. Great fucking movie. Underrated movie. Good
really
one.
Great. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice, not a very good movie. Not gonna lie.
I mean, I enjoy it, but I'm never. You know what? I like the cartoon better as a kid.
I just watched it though. It's not that great. And by the way, Michael Keaton, he's only in it for about 15 to 20 minutes.
He is only in it for like a little bit. And again, liking the cartoon better, I like his being a friend with what's her name in it versus in the cartoon versus the movie.
The 13-year-old that he wants to get married to, gross.
Yeah. Okay. Moving on.
Anyways. You were introduced to Larry.
And she is her character is so in love with Fletch.
She's in love with Fletch. She's Fletch's, assistant. She helps him out with everything. And she notices, she's in love with him. She notices the fact that he's wearing Magic's jersey, number 32. And Fletch goes, yeah, Kareem's in the wash for you playing along. Kareem's number, I think, was 33 for the Lakers.
Okay.
And Fletch says to Larry that he needs a favor. Out of nowhere, Walker, his boss, runs up behind him, yelling at him. And Fletch
trips over a box.
Yeah. He goes, you hear something? Larry goes, not me. And Fletch goes, yeah, me neither. As Walker runs up to Fletch like in a panic, Fletch tells Larry what she can dig up on a guy named Alan Stanwyck in Beverly Hills. When Walker comes up, he says, I take it by your presence here that the story's done. And Fletch goes, I'll be right there. And he goes, tell me I'm right. And Fletch goes, yes, you're right. But you're very peaked. You want to throw up? And he comes into his office. He goes, come in, vomit in my cubicle. And Walker says, I want an answer. The story's done, right? Fletch goes, almost. Walker goes, almost is not an answer. Yes, Frank, the story's all done. That's an answer. Walker, by the way, his first name is Frank.
Yeah.
And Fletch goes, and a damn fine answer, if I do say so, my damn self. Thank you. Takes a mini basketball and he's like shooting while Frank Walker is talking. And Walker goes, Irwin, professional journalism time now. Go back to the beach. And Fletch interrupts him and says, don't say Irwin, ever. That's Fletch's first name.
Yeah, it's going to be a running gag. It's not one of my favorite gags, but it is a running gag.
It's kind of lame, but whatever. Walker says, go back to the beach, finish the damn story. Fletch goes, Frank, I will, I swear. Something else came up. And Walker goes, no, that's not okay. You got a deadline tomorrow. Did you see the ad we ran on Sunday? And Fletch goes, I don't read the paper. What's this? And he asks the spread on the Laker game tonight. And Walker shows him the spread, which says Jane Doe. Go ahead.
Jane Doe. Was it drugs on the beach, shame of the city?
Yeah, drugs on our beaches, shame of the city, right?
It's great.
And Fletch reads it, drugs on our beaches, shame of the city. That's very nice. And Walker says, now try to follow me on this. And he says to Fletch, he goes, you can't run the ad and then not run the story.
You can't?
Why not?
Why not?
and then like Fletch continues like, shit, really? And then Fletch goes, look, Frank, I'm putting you on. You'll get the story and you'll be very proud of it. Walker goes, you broke it? You know the source? Fletch goes, practically. Walker goes, well, what's practically? Is it this guy, Fat Sam? You said you had pictures of him. Fletch goes, I do have pictures of him dealing. Walker goes, well, let's go. We'll run pictures of him dealing. Fletch goes, you can't do that. Fat Sam isn't the story. There's a source behind him. Walker goes, who? Fletch goes, well, there we're in kind of a gray area. And Walker says,
how gray?
And Fletch
Charcoal?
goes, yes. And then Fletch picks up a cup of coffee to offer him a cup of coffee, but he's like shaking it like he's having a stroke, basically. Suddenly cut to Fletch being in the microfilm like room where they're looking at the microfiche thing. You remember the old things back in the libraries back in the day?
Yeah, and then he's going up, down, left, right, but then you find out that it's Larry scratching his back, Gina Davis.
It's so funny because he's like giving her directions, but they move the picture while he's giving the directions, and it cuts to her giving him an itch. Anyways, they're looking at info on Alan Stanwyck. There's a photo of Alan in a news article with Alan giving a thumbs up, like a, hey, that's important because it'll come back. And they find out he's from Provo, Utah. He's formerly a test pilot, member of the JCs, which I guess is a prominent like flight group.
Sure.
He married Gail Stanwyck, who is the daughter of Boyd Aviation owner. And he's got parents, Marvin and Velma of Provo. And
Those are three names I enjoy. Marvin, Velma, and Provo.
And they keep scrolling through articles about Stanwyck. And then Fletch tells her to stop on one. It's about the Cancer Society. And it's a picture of Alan with a guy named Dr. Dolan. Dr. Dolan is...
A.K.A. Dr. Jellyfinger.
Yes, who we're going to be introduced to in just a moment. Fletch wonders out loud, I wonder if that's Alan's doctor. Larry says there's only one way to find out. And Fletch goes, you know what? There is. There's only one way to find out. Cut to the doctor's office with Dr. Dolan looking in Fletch's asshole with an instrument. Who is Dr. Dolan played by, Corey?
Dr. Dolan's played by Emmett Walsh. Fuck, man, dude. I mean, Blade Runner. Probably is the first one that sort of comes to my mind, but he was also in The Jerk, Blood Simple. Last season of Righteous Gemstones, he plays like Gemstone Grandpa or something. He was actually good in that. He looked terrible, but he was good. He's great, and he just died like a couple months ago too.
Yeah, sadly he just passed away, but I love him in Raising Arizona when he's giving the whole story about when Nicolas Cage is like working in a factory and he's got his hand in one hand and his asshole in the other. I don't forget what the story is, but I posted it on our $2 when he passed away because it's such a funny scene. He's a character actor, but he's just amazing. If you've never seen Blood Simple, directed by the Coen brothers, it's one of their best kind of like, it's in the vein of Miller's Crossing. It's got that vibe to it.
Yeah. I mean, I still prefer Miller's Crossing, but it's a good one though.
Yeah.
And then, not gonna lie, right now kicks into like back to back my 3 favorite scenes in this entire film. Now, this one right here is kind of standalone. The next 2 are sort of connected, the Dr. Rosenpenis and the spleen. But this one is standalone, and I think personally this is the single strongest scene in the entire film.
I agree with you. It is by far the best scene across the board. Yeah. So, Dr. Dolan comes up from Fletch's asshole and says, "So where do you know Alan from?" Fletch says, "We play tennis at the club." And Dr. Dolan says, "Really? California Racket Club?" Fletch goes, "Right." So you guys all need to understand, by the way, Fletch, he's bullshitting this entire story, making it up 100%.
Yeah, he bullshits everything to get to where he's going. And I do love when the other characters are like, what? And like are confused by what he's saying, but he kind of rolls past it. And that's the genius of his, the role that he's playing here with Fletch is like, I just love how he can just smooth talk his way into everything, basically.
Exactly. Dr. Dolan says, "I don't remember seeing you there." And Fletch says, "Well, I haven't been playing there for a while because of these kidney pains." And he asks him how long he's had them. He says, "Well, how long have you had these pains, Mr. Barber?" Fletch goes, "No, that's Babar."
That's Babar. 2 B's, 1 B, B-A-B-A-R. That's 2. I love how confused the doctor is, but Fletch goes, "But not right next to each other. I thought that's what you meant."
Arnold Babar.
The doctor goes, "Isn't there a children's book about an elephant named Babar?" Fletch goes, "I don't know. I don't have any. Children? Elephant books." I mean, that's fucking genius, man.
And then he continues. He goes, "It's an odd name. I don't recall seeing it on the club registry." Fletch says, "Well, I don't formally belong. I'm a guest of my aunt's." And Dr. Dolan says, "Your aunt?" And Fletch goes, "Right. Mrs. Smith." Dr. Dolan goes, "Joan or Margaret?" And Fletch goes, "Uh-huh, right." Mm-hmm. "Well, which one?" Dolan says. "Margaret," Fletch says. "A funny old bird," Dr. Dolan says. Fletch says, is she ever. I could tell you some stories." Dr. Dolan continues, says, "I bet. It's a shame about Ed." Fletch says, "Yeah, it really is a shame. To go so suddenly like that." Dr. Dolan says, "Yeah, but he's dying for years." And says,
for years.
Fletch goes, "Sure, but the end was very sudden." Dr. Dolan stops suddenly while he's kind of going over Fletch's records and goes, "He was in intensive care for 8 weeks." Fletch,
but at the very end,
he kind of stuttered. It's like, but at the very end, when he actually did die, that was extremely sudden. And then he kind of continues because he wants to get information about Alan.
Yeah.
He goes, "Speaking of dying, Alan said Boyd Aviation took out a large insurance policy on him. Got to be in some kind of perfect shape for that sort of policy." And at that point, Dr. Dolan says, "Drop your shorts and bend over, Mr. Babar."
Because he's like, fuck this conversation.
Yeah, Fletcher's like, "Oh, no, we really don't need to."
No, I'm feeling much better now.
He goes, "My kidneys feel a lot
calisthenics."
better. Yeah, he's like, "My kidneys feel a lot better in this position. If I did some sit-ups in the morning," suddenly you see the doctor go behind him under Fletch.
Like drop out of frame, kind of like.
Fletch is continuing to talk. He's like, "If I bend over like this, I'd probably feel 100% better." River. Woo. Thank you, Doc. Ever serve time? And so he continues to talk to Dr. Dolan while Dr. Dolan's all up in his biz. And he was telling the doctor about there's a history of cancer in the family, with Alan's family. And
Using the whole fist, Doc?
Yeah, Dolan's down there digging in, and he goes, yeah, as a matter of fact, and then he says, what does he say?
It says, using the whole fist, Doc?
Just relax, Dr. Dolan says. Fletch says, yeah, I saw Alan the other day. He's looking a little peaked. I don't know. I think he's lost weight. Are you sure he's okay? Dolan suddenly comes up from behind Fletch's ass and says, I can't discuss another patient with you. You know that. Well, I don't find anything wrong with you. And Fletch says, well,
I'm sure it's not for a lack of looking.
Cut to the
hold on.
Hospital. Okay, go ahead. Yes.
So, when I first moved to LA, times were tough, as they pretty much were the entire time I was in LA. But I donated sperm to make money. And in order to do that, you have to get a medical exam. You know, they send you to a doctor, and it was great because I didn't have any health insurance at the time, so I actually got a free, full physical and everything, which is great. But I didn't know, because I was also like early 30s. I'd never had a proctology exam before, so I didn't know that was coming. So the doctor's sitting there talking to me, and he's like, all right, so now for the unfortunate part. And I was like, oh, he goes, are you a Fletch fan? And I was like, oh my God. I was like, I love this guy already. I was like, yeah. He was like, well, it's Moon River time. And I was like, okay.
That's amazing.
So as his finger, I don't know how it works, was in my asshole, 2 fingers in my asshole, I said, using the whole fist, Doc? And he laughed. And I felt him laugh through my asshole. But he was one of the best doctors I've ever fucking had, because he fucking knew Moon River, and he knew Fletch, and he laughed when I said using the whole fist, Doc.
Apparently he laughed with his fingers too.
Yeah, he chuckled, and I could feel him chuckle. So I texted Zach. I was like, we could literally do a 2-hour podcast of just breaking down the Dr. Rosen penis scene and then the spleen scene. We're not going to do that here, but I'm going to talk about how much I fucking love this.
From there, you cut to Fletch walking down a hospital corridor, and his VO kicks in. He goes, I was anxious to get back to my drug story, but since Dr. Jellyfinger wasn't talking, I just had to find out a little bit more about Stanwyck's health. He comes up to a directory at the hospital, and what does he see on the directory, Corey?
I love the look on Chevy Chase's face. He's like flummoxed or something and flabbergasted, but it's all Rosen something. All the doctors are Rosen something. I paused it. I wrote them all down. I'm going to rattle them off. Rosenar, Rosenbach, Rosenbaum, Rosenberg, Rosenstone, Rosenfield, Rosendahl, Rosengeld, Rosenschwerd, Rosenskell, Rosenfeld, Rosenveld, Rosenthal, Rosenblatt, and Rosenkunz.
But when the nurse at the counter asks if she can help him, he turns around and introduces himself as Dr. What?
It's me, Dr. Rosenpenis. I'm just here to check Stanwyck's files. Who?
Doctor who?
Who? Doctor who? Dr. Rosen. I'm here to get to the records room. And she goes, the name again? It's Dr. Rosenheit. He's like, I want to check the records room. And she's like, Doctor who? Dr. Rosen. Where's the records room? And I love he's like dropping his papers everywhere. He's like, and I love it when he goes, what the hell's happening? Like, to himself. Where the hell's the records room? It's my favorite comedic scene. One of them, top 5 in any movie ever. The way Chevy Chase rattles off all the Rosen penis and Rosen bombs and Rosen and everything. But at the same time, he's dropping his papers and he's getting flustered by that. He's like, what the hell is happening? I love it. But on this viewing, I've always loved the spleen scene, but I found a whole new appreciation for that scene. We'll get to that in a second.
Yeah, this is amazing because when he hands over the files, he's like, I just would like to check the Alan Stanwyck's file, and finally she says it's next to pathology, B1. He goes, I can't hear you, because he's got a stethoscope in his ears, and he goes, what? She goes, B1. He holds up the front of the stethoscope that you hear the heartbeat on to her mouth, and he says, can you just collate these for me? And he gives her the files. He goes, where did you say it was? B1. He goes, oh, thank you very much. And she goes, you can take the elevator. And he goes, thank you very much. And he just takes the stairs. Yeah. And then when he goes to the stairs, he puts on a full like doctor's gear outfit and walks into the hallway of where B1 is. As he's doing that, he hears a guy yell.
He slips because he puts his little booties on his shoes and he's walking and he like almost falls.
He almost falls, which is amazing.
Well, you know, it's funny. There's not a lot of pratfall comedy from Chevy Chase in this movie, which is interesting because that was kind of his big shtick on SNL.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he was. He played, I think, Gerald Ford. I think he played.
And he was always falling and like trying to. I remember the one where he's trying to put up the Christmas tree and he falls into the Christmas tree and everything.
I would do those bits at school in my ceramics class. And I would be walking with clay. You know, and clay doesn't really splatter if you're walking with it. But I would act like I tripped and fell, and when clay hits the ground, just smacks. And I'm like, what the hell just happened? My ceramics teacher, Mr. Sackman, who was my only teacher I ever liked in high school, was such a cool dude. He thought it was hilarious. And I would get on the table and do the lounge singing bit that Bill Murray would do, the Star Wars.
Nothing but Star Wars.
And all the assholes in the class that just took ceramics because they thought it was an easy A and didn't actually want to do art were like, sit down. And Mr. Sackman would stick up for me and go, shut up. Please continue. It's amazing.
That's awesome.
Shout out to Mr. Sackman. What a great name, by the way.
Yeah.
So he hears a guy yell out to Fletch, "Hey, you, give me a hand for a second." And he's in the, Fletch points at himself. He goes, "Come on. Yeah. Come in here." And he goes into, to see I guess it's the pathologist. But they're doing he's doing an autopsy basically on a body. And as he's doing that, Fletch walks over to the table and he's like,
he's trying not to look at
mortified.
The body.
Yeah, he is mortified. And the pathologist says, "You ever seen a spleen this large?"
Fletch goes, breakfast.
He goes, "Here, hold this." And he gives him something. And he wants to give him the spleen. And Fletch goes, "Well, listen, I'm not really prepared for this. I haven't properly sterilized my hands." The pathologist says, "Well, you're not going to make this guy any sicker." And
I like how the laugh turns into like almost a vomit. And then the camera, my eyes are watering. The camera stays on Chevy Chase's face as you're hearing like the drilling and everything like that. He's mortified. He's about to pass out. I mean, what Chevy Chase, the actor, is doing here is fucking gold. But what kills me, every time he's trying so hard not to pass out, something metallic falls. And I just love how he's like, he goes, "Oh, I'll get it."
And he like doesn't, he's like trying not to vomit, pass out.
Get it.
But he just says it. Yeah. And then suddenly the pathologist, who's like not even paying attention to Chevy, he like puts his drill down and he goes, "Boy, you never get used to the smell." And he kind of like wafts his hands like to up to his face and he breathes in deeply. And then Fletch just collapses and falls backwards.
He goes, "I'm going to be sick." And he falls. But dude, the fact that he's trying to maintain like to not pass out and when the guy drops whatever, "I'll get it." But he doesn't like attempt to get it. He just says it. I don't know, man. Like this is shit you can't like you can't rehearse it or whatever. Like this was all Chevy Chase, dude. This was all him.
That's why like you did, and if anyone's ever said any interest in reading the books, zero.
Yeah.
Because I just I just want to watch Chevy Chase all day doing his thing.
Yeah.
And then when Fletch comes to, there's a nurse in there checking on him, and he goes, "Where am I?" Well, the nurse is like relieved and she goes, "Oh, doctor, are you all right?" And he goes, "Well, where am I?" She goes, "You're in the records room." He goes, "Oh, the records room? I'm fine." And he sits up on the couch that he's been laying on, and his back is to the window to pathology. And in that window to pathology, you see the pathologist and Dr. Jellyfinger as well.
Dr. Jellyfinger.
Hanging out, looking at the spleen, I suppose. And, nurse asks if she can get him something. He goes, "Yes. Do you have the Beatles' White Album?"
I mean, man, I mean, obviously with comedy, you're going to get some datedness. It's one of the few dated sort of comments in this.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I say that shit all the time.
No, I don't say it's bad. Like, I mean, you and I like it, but I mean, if you show it to somebody now, they're going to be like, what? What does that mean?
Well,
I'll go on Spotify and listen to the Beatles' White Album, you know?
This whole thing is funny because he goes, do you have the Beatles' White Album? Never mind. Just get me a glass of hot fat and bring me the head of Alfredo Garcia while you're out there.
Yeah.
And the nurse doesn't even bat an eye. And she goes, well, Dr. Holmes went to get you some smelling salts. He was quite surprised. And the nurse says, he was surprised. I thought that was my dead brother in there. And the nurse
kind of
freaks
gasps.
out.
She's like, oh my God. And he's like, oh no, but the spleen is a spitting image.
Yeah. So finally he goes, I'm fine though. And he turns around and he realizes who's in the room next door. And he kind of makes this gargling sound like, he goes, and very calmly, he goes, nurse, I'm hyperventilating. Would you
know what that gargling sound reminds me of? That's the same sound that the Gamorrean guard at Jabba the Hutt's palace makes when Luke force chokes him.
Okay.
Moving on. No, it's not the same sound.
No. And for anyone who is ever hyperventilated, he calmly says, would you give me a paper bag, please? And so she goes to get one. When she does, he runs over to the records to check on Alan Stanwyck. He finds the records of Stanwyck and he starts reading them. And as he does, the nurse comes back in and she grabs them out of his hand. And she's like, is there anything particular I can help you with?
Yeah, she's clearly annoyed.
Yeah, because you're not supposed to be looking at that. She gives him the paper bag. He's taking it and he's like kind of breathing into it. And he's asking her about, if this guy, Alan, had any sort of cancer. He said, my colleague was doing a biopsy and he had on this man. He has had some sort of melanoma or carcinoma, some kind of noma.
Some kind of noma.
He goes, but there's no record of it here. And she digs a little deeper and she goes, she finds a surgical removal of 2 moles. That's benign. And Fletch goes, there's no mention of cancer. She goes, that's it. And Fletch goes, so basically, to clarify, Alan Stanwyck does not have cancer. And she goes, I guess not.
I love that line because it was 100% for the audience.
Totally. Yes, exactly. And he goes, he'll be so relieved. Thank you very much. And he puts the paper bag on his face and starts breathing into it. And he goes, have a nice day as he leaves. As he starts to leave the hospital, he walks by the pathologist room where the doctors are laughing and joking about whatever. Fletch takes a big breath into the bag and pops it, scaring the shit out of the 2 of them, and just walks off.
Yeah, and the pathologist drops the spleen. It's great. Yeah. And 2 things that I never noticed until subtitles, twice in this scene, actually once upstairs, the Rosen penis scene, and downstairs here, there are 2 calls over the intercom, one for Dr. Rosenharris the first time, and then at the end, it's for Dr. Rosenstein. So they keep the Rosen bit going.
Oh my God. It's really funny.
I
love it. Cut to California Racket Club, which I believe this looks like a place in Encino that I used to go to back in the day, previous life of mine. Fletch is walking through the parking lot with a tennis racket in his hand. He swings the tennis racket right into a Mercedes-Benz.
Yeah, it's great.
By the way, it's worth noting that the tennis racket has a cover over it as well that never comes off. He walks into a restaurant and he sees an asshole sitting at a table with his wife, like berating the waiter. And the guy is Mr. Underhill. You're introduced to Mr. Underhill for the first time.
Fucking Mr. Underhill, man. What a piece of shit. Played by William Taylor. He is also in Dead Bang. Remember that movie? But he's also in The Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai.
Oh, well, Dead Bang, decent. And Buckaroo Banzai, fantastic.
Big Boutte.
Yes.
He unfortunately passed away in 1989. But because I was going through the IMDb, I accidentally clicked on the lady that played his wife. She's actually in Fletch Lives. So she's as Mrs. Underhill in the next movie. So I guess they keep the gag going. I
guess they do. It's been so long, I don't remember that gag, but kind of want to go watch it again. We'll see. Yeah, so he's being an asshole. Even Mrs. Underhill's kind of like, to her husband, she's like, Tom, he goes, does it look, the waiter goes to pick up Mr. Underhill's plate and he's like, does it look like I'm finished? And the waiter's like, I guess not. And
it's like 2 French fries. It's just 2 of them. And
Yeah,
he
and he-
grabs them and eats them. He's like, now I'm finished.
Yeah. And then the waiter's like, whatever you say, Mr. Underhill. And suddenly, Mr. Underhill says, I imagine you were expecting a nice gratuity. And he just hands him the check and he goes, maybe next time. Suddenly,
you hope that they're going to split those all, like, because I'm sure at a country club like this, you're going to get a lot of assholes like that. So I hope it's one of those scenarios where the wait staff all like pools and splits, their
I hope
money.
so, but maybe not. Yeah. At the same time this is going on, Fletch, he spots Gail Stanwyck on the tennis court playing the worst game of solo tennis you can imagine in your entire life. She's missing every ball that's coming to her. She finally hits one and even like calls it out. She's like, oh, I hit one. That was
it goes like straight up in the air. Like it's,
That was when Kristen laughed out loud. She's like, that was a funny line. I like that. Anyways, Fletch walks over to her and he introduces herself. He goes, Gail Stanwyck? And she goes, yeah. He goes, I haven't seen you since the wedding. You look great. She goes, oh, that's very sweet of you. She goes, but I got to confess something. I must have been pretty plowed at your wedding. I have no idea who you are. Fletch goes, not my wedding, your wedding. And they kind of laugh back and forth.
Oh,
it's very like
nope, still nope.
White
She's like,
people.
Nope, still
Yep. Are you a friend of Alan's? And he goes, yeah, we used to fly together. I'm John. She goes, oh, John. And they laugh back and forth.
Nope, still nothing.
Nope.
John Cocktuston.
John Cocktuston. She goes, that's a beautiful name. He goes, well, it's Scotch-Romanian. She goes, that's an odd combination. She goes,
you should see my parents.
She says, do you mind if I practice some more? I have to work on my ground stroke. And they kind of look at each other like they're into each other, right?
Yeah, I mean, Chevy Chase is a good-looking dude.
Yeah, and she's a good-looking gal. And she goes back to playing at her tennis ball machine, and Fletch goes back to leaning against the fence, and a waiter comes over and asks if he's a member of the club, and he goes, no, I'm not. I'm with the Underhills. And the waiter says, well, they've left, Senor. They've left.
Senor.
And he goes, that's all right. They'll be back. He went out for his urinalysis. And the waiter says, well, would you like some drinks? While you wait, I'll put it on the Underhills bill. Fletch is like, very well. Yes, I'll have a Bloody Mary and a steak sandwich and a steak sandwich. He walks back over to Gail and asks how Alan's doing, and she's like, what are you asking me for? He's been so busy, I rarely see him. And Fletch asks what he's been busy with, and she's like, I don't know, personal stuff. And then that's when she hits one. She's like, whoa, look, I hit one. And that's Fletch basically gives her some pointers, and he kind of tells her how to stand and get ready for the ball. And he picks up the ball and he hits it with his racket that's still covered, which for some reason, I think it's hilarious. And they're waiting for the balls to come out, and no more balls come out. And he goes, how many balls did you put in the machine? She goes, I thought a lot. And he goes, yeah, well, that's it. It's finished. Oh, good. Much better. He's like very proud of her little mini lesson. And she goes, I must be having an off day. I'm usually a fabulous player. Fletch says, and I've used this many times, well, I have this effect on a lot of women.
There you go.
And Gail says, I bet you do, kind of with a sly look on her face. And he goes, the reason I was asking about Alan is that I bumped into him this morning, and you know what I can't figure out? And she goes,
I like how she just cuts him off. She's like, Alan's in Utah.
I can't figure out what I was doing in Utah this morning.
Yeah. And the jig is up.
Jig is up. She's like, I'm very flattered, but I'm also very married. You're trying to hit on me.
If I had a nickel for every time one of Alan's flyboys tried to pick me up, I'd be a rich woman. And I like how Fletch goes, you are a rich woman. And she goes, see what I mean? I like that. That was a really cool line.
Yeah, it's great. It's great. From there, he cut to one of my favorite scenes.
Mr. Poon.
We are introduced to Mr. Poon. We are in Stanton Boyd's office. Stanton is Gail's dad. He's the president of Boyd Aviation.
And that's why he has a picture of Alan and his daughter behind him, like their marriage picture.
A marriage picture, a wedding photo, and Alan Stanwyck's got his big thumbs up like the Fonz going, hey.
Hey.
Remember that. Same pose that he has in the other picture when he was with, that they saw earlier in the movie.
Yep. And doesn't he have his thumbs up with Sally Ann Kavanaugh
He
as
sure
well?
does. Same one, yep.
Yep.
So now Fletch is dressed kind of like a nerdy guy, and he's got a Band-Aid under his nose, and he's explaining, he's like, who'd have thought the vice president knew I was opening the door, but the Secret Service will whack this blood. And he's talking to Boyd, and Boyd is like not amused.
No.
And Fletch is just kind of trying to change the subject, and he's Washington. Secretary comes in and asks him if he wants sugar. She goes, "Sugar, Mr. Poon?" He goes, "No, never. Thank you." And Fletch says, "Well, let me reiterate." He's kind of putting on an affect to his voice as well. He's like, "This is not a formal investigation. That is, if Alan Stanwyck is not involved in any improprieties." So he's pretending to be a guy who works for the State Department investigating Alan Stanwyck in Boyd Aviation.
Right. Yeah, he's probably the SEC or something, right?
Yes, yeah. And Boyd is pissed. He's like, "I don't know where the SEC comes off even making an allegation or accusation."
Someone's bucking for a promotion. Probably that pederast Hannaran.
Is it a pederast, a pedophile?
Yeah, specifically one that fucks boys.
That's what Jesus had to do. He was a pederast in Big Lebowski. You remember he had to go door to door?
Yeah,
telling everybody?
Yep. There's a pederast, yep.
Jesus
and I looked it up because I wanted to be sure, and so now it's like, I had looked it up on Google, and I'm like, it's probably going to get me flagged for something.
What's a pederast?
Am I a pederast?
We're, our phones are listening to us right now. Like,
yeah.
By the way, side note, Stephen Collins, who was on Seventh Heaven, he was a pederast, or pedophile. Whatever. He was kid diddler, basically.
Yeah, he was also in Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
Yes, Dylan Laurie sent me a article today about Tales of the Golden Monkey, I believe is the name of the show. It'll definitely pop up on TV Obscura. Tales of the Golden Monkey, I think.
Okay.
He was the lead actor in that, but it was like a adventure story about a guy, kind of like an Indiana Jones type character, with Roddy McDowell as his assistant.
Interesting. How old was that? What year? Like
in the
80s, I assume. Okay.
83, I believe. 83 or 84.
Okay. All right. Add that one to the TV Obscura list.
So thanks,
the
Dylan.
Other pederasts.
Right. Jesus Christ. Unfortunately, very relevant in Hollywood, sadly.
Yeah.
And so Boyd's pissed, So Fletch in character is like, as Poon says, "All I know is that if I don't go back with something, and you and your son-in-law are going to be the scapegoats of the week." Boyd's like, "Unbelievable. This is unbelievable." Fletch is looking at this fake file. And he goes, "Look at this. They want to know what he's doing in Utah." Boyd goes, "Jesus H. Christ on a popsicle stick. First of all, Alan Stanwyck does not own one single share of stock. The $3 million for the ranch in Provo was entirely provided by my daughter, who converted some of her personal holdings, not corporate holdings. You tell your DC boys they want to make something out of that. Bring them on. Otherwise, you tell the commissioner to get the hell out of my face."
So when I was younger, and way younger, I missed things, didn't quite, get them. Then I get older and I watch this movie. I watch it high and I'm just laughing at all the jokes. But now I'm actually like watching, like, what's the plot? Like, what are these little vignette scenes? They're almost little sketches, but they're important because it's all about Fletch getting these little bits of information. Like he wasn't expecting the director of Boyd Aviation, her dad, to start talking about this $3 million thing and everything, and you can see it on Fletch's face. He's like, "Oh, okay, this is the information I came for." And as now that I'm watching it, I was high the other day when I watched it, but I'm like, I like piecing it together and being like, and following sort of the breadcrumbs and the trail that Fletch follows to figure out what the fuck is going on.
Yeah, and I'm glad you bring that up because a lot of movies in the 80s, like Fast Times at Ridgemont High, and they are like vignettes, little skits, but this particular movie really leads. The vignettes mean something. They lead to a destination that we're headed to. They're not just for Chevy Chase to do his bit and do some improv. They all are relevant.
And that's the thing, like, I know, like, the trailer really played up all the different, characters that Chevy Chase is playing, and it's even on the poster. They sort of talk about all he changes, faces as much as he changes underwear, whatever. But in actuality, in the movie, he's just doing it to kind of get in, and it obviously it happens to be funny, like Mr. Poon, Comanche Indian, like it's all funny, but it's all still connected because he is still following a trail. They're not separately, they're not disparate. They're actually very connected. And I don't think of this movie as, I think of Fast Times as more of a vignette movie. I think this movie is just very connected.
Yeah. No, totally agree. I love this because after Boyd is on his high horse and he's like, "You get out of my face," tell them to get the hell out of my face. Fletch Poon lets out this sigh and he's like, "God, I admire you."
Yeah.
He goes, "Well, consider this case closed," and he shuts his briefcase and he pulls the Band-Aid off his nose. He goes, "Look, it's even stopped bleeding. Isn't that something?" Boyd, it's like he's congratulating himself for the fact that Poon's nose stopped bleeding. He's like, "My pleasure." So Fletch gets up to go out. He's like, "Well, thank you and good day." He starts to walk out and he opens the door into his face. He grabs his nose again. That's his little, bit, Gerald Ford bit. And suddenly Boyd goes, "What kind of name is Poon?" And Fletch goes, "Comanche Indian." And he leaves. And I love this bit. He walks out into the secretary and he says, "Oh, Madeline, Frida lost the number for," he's kind of broken his Poon character. He's like, "Frida lost the number for Alan's realtor in Provo, Utah. Could you give that to me real quick, please?" And Madeline goes, "Oh, Jim Swarthout?" And Fletch goes, "Oh, yeah." And she goes, I'm sorry, who are you again?" He goes, "I'm Frida's boss." And she goes,
"Who's
Frida?"
And
who's Frida? He goes, "My secretary."
But she's like, as she's saying it and they're having the conversation, she's writing down the information for him and handing it over to him, but she's completely confused. Right. And I mean, the premise of this entire shtick, the entire movie shtick, is that if you act like you know what you're doing, you can kind of get in and anywhere and do anything.
Yes, I've used that many a time.
It works remarkably well in the real world. Seriously, get into anything. Just act like you're supposed to be there.
Right, exactly.
It's almost like George. It's not a lie if you believe it.
Well, think about how many times you have to go to the bathroom, right? And you stop by a restaurant where it's for customers only or a hotel, right? You just walk in,
Like you own the place.
Yeah, exactly. Cut to Fletch in his car. The amazing score kicks in, and Fletch goes, "I knew my junkie pals were awaiting my good cheer on the beach, but I needed a second wind, a beer, and a wardrobe change. As I pulled up to my palatial imitation apartment building, I observed the familiar red Oldsmobile Buick of Mr. Arnold T. Pants, Esquire, attorney for the former Mrs. Irwin Fletcher."
I love Mr. Arnold T. Pants, Esquire.
He says,
and this, like I said, this is definitely Santa Monica. And they have it on IMDb. It's 827 4th Street.
Yeah, I love that. He wants to avoid the lawyer of his wife, so he uses the fire escape. But as he goes up the fire escape, who's waiting for him but Mr. Arnold T. Pants?
He's played by George Weiner, who I think we all know as one of the second in command guy in Spaceballs.
Yeah, he's been in he's been in a ton of things. And back in the day when I was making, those birthday collages on $2 late fees Instagram, I believe I made one for him that I Am Fletch cast might even give me a shout out there. Like, "I can't believe you called out Richard Weimer," or what. I'm like, "Yeah, dude, he was cool. Love this guy."
And speaking of the Coen brothers, he was also in a movie called A Serious Man, which was a very good Coen brothers movie. Did you ever see that one?
I did see that one. I've only seen it once. It's one of those Coen brother movies that were it didn't really stand out, but if you watch it, you're like, "Oh yeah, this is really good."
Yeah, I'm not going to go back and own the Blu-ray or whatever, but the 90 minutes that I was in it, I was loving it.
Yeah, and I love the Coen brothers make fairly tight movies too. I think Miller's Crossing was one of their longest, and that was only an hour and 50 minutes. But anyways, so when Fletch gets up there, the lawyer launches right into, "Refusal to pay alimony is a jailable offense, Fletch." And Fletch is like, "What about trespassing and loitering?" And the lawyer says, "I'm neither loitering nor trespassing. I've simply chosen an advisable location to await my client's delinquent husband." Fletch, annoyed, says, "Well, I don't like discussing business on the lanai. Let's go inside." And as they go inside, Fletch goes, "If you're if you're wearing rubbers, leave them outside, would you?" And this is funny because Fletch has a basketball hoop inside his apartment, much like Wings Hauser did in Deadly Force, but the difference being Wings Hauser played basketball with a soccer ball,
yes.
And Fletch plays basketball with a basketball.
Yes.
Go back to our Deadly Force episode with Wings Hauser. That was a fun one to break down.
That's great. Love
anyways,
that movie.
On the back wall, it's really cool. I always love this, like, wallpaper poster because
it's like a mural of some sort. It's
a
the
mural,
entire wall.
Yeah, it's the entire wall of Larry Bird versus Magic Johnson, Magic going up for, like, a layup while Larry Bird's trying to block him. It's amazing.
But it's like a blown up picture to the size of a wall. So like they're even larger, than real life and everything. Yeah, it's really cool.
I love it. And I quote this line all the time because Fletch asks the lawyer if he wants to play a little one-on-one. And then he kind of like headbutts the lawyer. I thought he always said pump fake, but he goes he makes some noise and he goes, draws the foul.
Yeah.
And so the lawyer's very unamused, and he's like, you owe Wendy $918. And he's like, she doesn't need it. She's been living with someone for months, and I know it. And the lawyer's like, I don't know what you're referring to. Wendy maintains her own residence. Fletch is annoyed, but the lawyer says, you threw her out. And Fletch goes, she was sleeping with everybody. And the lawyer says, you should have proved it in a court of law. Fletch says, my lawyer was a bum. The lawyer goes, I agree.
I agree.
And Fletch says, I think she slept with him too. And the lawyer says, you may be right. And then Fletch looks at him while he's looking through his mail, and he's like, you serious?
Yeah, I like that. Because that one, you could tell that one kind of dug in.
Yeah, and the lawyer's like, look, you owe us $918. And then suddenly Fletch gets excited, and he goes, hey, I think our problems may just be solved. And he holds up a Publishers Clearinghouse sweepstakes envelope with Ed McMahon on the cover of it.
Bro, man, talk about something that doesn't exist anymore.
No. He goes, I think I just won $1 million. He goes, yeah, Irwin M. Fletcher, you choose. Ooh-wee. Oh boy, I lost again. Sorry. And just kind of dismisses the lawyer, and the lawyer says, this is no joke, Fletch. If some kind of payment isn't made, I'm going to have to contact your paper, garnish your wages.
I can't have my wages garnishy.
And that's when Fletch pulls out his cash that Stanwyck gave him.
Yep.
And Fletch says, saw my pimp today. But before he gives him the money, he asks the lawyer to open up his raincoat because he's wearing a trench, but he won't.
No.
He goes, come on, just once. It's worth it. And then he gives him the money finally. He says, it's $1,000. Apply the difference the next month. And keep 10 for yourself. Go out and get yourself a nice piece of ass. Cut from there, Fletch opening the refrigerator, getting a beer, laying down on his bed, watching the basketball game. And as he does, he falls asleep. And he starts fantasizing himself playing for the Los Angeles Lakers. And Chick Hearn, who's a longtime Laker color man, is interviewing Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and they're talking about Fletch with the afro. How tall is he, Corey?
He's actually 6'5", with the afro 6'9". I love that. I love it with the afro 6'9".
It's a hilarious fantasy scene because it kind of cuts back to Fletch every now and then with a big smile on his face as he's fantasizing playing for the Lakers. And it cuts back to Fletch going up for a layup, but he gets kind of clubbed by a bunch of the other players on the other team. And what does he do to the player on the other team?
He bites the guy's arm. I love. It's like in slow motion. He's like, ah.
As Chick Hearn is saying, Fletch. He truly defines grace under pressure.
Under pressure, yeah. So this is one of my. I don't love this scene. I think it's funny, but I don't love it. And maybe it's because it's like a tone change. It's the only dream that we sort of get, but I know that there were other ones that they cut. There was a Tommy Lasorda dream sequence, and I think there was a hockey one, or there was one more, but there were supposed to be multiple dream sequences in the movie. I'm very glad that this is the only one, but at the same time, if this one didn't exist, as much as I love he's actually 6'5" with the afro 6'9", as much as I love that, if this was gone, I would be okay with that.
Yeah, it's just like a throwaway scene. It doesn't mean anything.
And it's mainly because I don't typically care about dreams in movies. Like unless it's like Freddy Krueger and it has some real world effect, in the real world. I also kind of don't fucking care about listening to other people's dreams either. It's all just, I don't care. So I'm just kind of an anti-dream guy.
Yeah, and it doesn't move the story at all. So
right.
So
but
there you go.
I get it. And it's funny. But at the same time, this movie's an hour and 36 minutes. You could trim this 90 seconds.
Yeah, I agree. And the scenes where he's driving around in his car.
But we also get the music, though, at that point.
Well, we'll get to that because we'll get there. We're getting there. So from there, you cut to back to the beach. Fletch is on a payphone at the beach talking to Larry, and he's asking Larry to check out the Swarthout guy in Provo, Utah. At the same time, too, he sees a police car pulling off the road going after Gummy on the beach. Fletch runs after the car to see what's going on, and Creasy runs after Fletch. He asks Fletch what's going on, and he tells Fletch to split, basically. Fletch runs under the pier to chase after the car, where the car has now tracked down Gummy, and they're slamming Gummy up. The police are slamming Gummy up against a fence, and then they throw him into the police car. Fletch runs over to see if he can help, and he's kind of yelling at the cops, saying, like, what are you doing? The policemen run over to Fletch, and one of the cops kicks him in the groin.
Yeah.
Kind of kicks him in the shin, but I think it's supposed to be in the groin. Fletch drops to the ground, and Creasy's like yelling out to Fletch, like, oh, Fletch, oh, Fletch.
Fletch.
They throw Gummy into the police car and take off, and as they do, Fletch picks up a rock, throws it at the police car, shattering the back window, and it just drives off. Creasy says to Fletch, you're really nuts, Fletch, you okay? Fletch is like, yeah, I feel like $100. Which I say all the time. Because they didn't do anything. Creasy's like, what are you talking about? He's like, I busted their window. They didn't do anything. Creasy's like, you're lucky or something. Fletch says, it's not luck. They didn't want me. They wanted Gummy. Cops and Gummy. He kind of ponders.
Yeah. And apparently they're talking to the actor who plays Gummy, and he kind of outran the actor who was playing the police officer, and they had to kind of shoot it multiple times because apparently his middle name is Flash, the actor who plays Gummy.
Yes.
So I think he maybe must have picked that up somewhere for a reason. But yeah, anyways, fun little factoid.
Yeah, the fun little...
Shoot it multiple times and have him slow down a little bit.
Little factoid. Cut back to... Fletch in his editor's office, Walker, or I'll just call him Frank. I'm just gonna call him Frank.
I don't even think of him as Walker. He's Frank to me.
Yeah, I don't know why I was listed that. Anyways, he's like, Frank, I could be onto something here. Frank goes, you're onto something? And Fletch goes, yeah. And he goes, well, good. What? And he goes, well, I don't want to spoil your surprise. You'll read about it tomorrow. Then Larry comes in the office, and she goes, I need Fletch for a second. She kind of whispers to Fletch, nothing on Utah or Jim Swarthout. And he looks at Frank and he goes, we got to put this story on the back burner. And then he asks Larry to scratch his back out of nowhere. And Frank's like, can you just give me a hint what you're doing? And Fletcher goes, all right, there may just be cops involved in all this. And Larry interrupts and says, did you say cops? And Fletcher goes, yeah. She goes, because that's the one thing I did find. It's from last month. And she picks up a newspaper. And it says Stanwyck joins Citizens Committee. And it's a picture of Stanwyck with Chief Carlin. And Fletch goes, I need to go to Utah, to Frank. Frank's like, Utah? And Fletch goes, yeah, Utah. It's wedged between Nevada and Wyoming. You've seen pictures. Frank's like, what about finding the source? Fletch goes, I have some ideas. And then Fletch goes, come on, Frank, just say yes. I'll buy you some new deodorant.
And it's interesting because these are connected things, but he's not really telling Frank that they're connected. He's just kind of, right? Like, Frank thinks he's working on something different right now.
Well, and I think Fletch thinks they're two separate things right
okay.
now. I think
he
still...
doesn't... Yeah. Okay.
I think he hasn't made the connection yet.
Okay.
But from here, you cut to one of the hilarious scenes in the movie, another hilarious scene, Fletch on an airplane.
Fiddling with the recorder.
He's fiddling with his tape recorder, and when he does, he accidentally presses play instead of record, and you hear Larry moaning while they're having sex. And she goes,
is that Larry?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
I never, ever knew that, and that kind of changes things.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. And then she's like, are you recording this? He's no, of course not.
Never.
Wow, that's Larry, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So he's fiddling with the tape recorder, and he asks himself, finally, when he gets around to pressing record, he's like, why does a man ask me to kill him and lying about dying when he isn't dying? Why? Gail Stanwyck converts $3 million of her own stocks to buy the ranch. Why paying cash? Plane lands. You see Fletch driving in the car.
And this is actually Utah. I think when he goes back to Utah later, it's not Utah, but this here is. Like this hotel, this motel and stuff, this is actually all Utah.
Yeah, they actually filmed there. And Fletch is in this on the phone in a motel, while the receptionist is watching a Mr. Potato Head commercial. And he's calling Mr. Jim Swarthout.
Yeah.
Hello, Mr. Swarthout. My name is Igor Stravinsky, and I'm calling you about some ranch property I'd like to buy. Cut to Swarthout in his office, and who plays Jim Swarthout?
Very underutilized. I assume maybe he had more scenes later. But William Sanderson from Blade Runner, the Bob Newhart Show, my brother Daryl, my other brother Daryl. Funny thing is, he'll always be that character to me. But yeah, William Sanderson, man.
Black Moon Rising, when he gets hit by the car. He's the mute in that. Yep.
Yep.
And Swarthout says, "Oh, you're a friend of Alan's," and Fletch, as Igor Stravinsky, says, "Well, not exactly. I was at the club and I overheard some people talking about the property you sold him, and $3 million sounded like a good price to me." Then the receptionist at the desk turns while she's watching the Mr. Potato Head ad, looking at $3 million, because in 1985, $3 million was what, 6 million?
No, 3 million would be 9 million.
So Swarthout's telling him something on the phone, but it's just funny because Fletch goes, "Oh, well, then I've been very misinformed. Excuse you?" "Yes."
Excuse you.
Anyways, he tries to set up a time to meet with Swarthout. Swarthout says he's about to close up shop, and that's what Fletch is getting out of him, is when is he going to leave?
Yep, that's all he wants.
So from there, Swarthout's gone from his office, and Fletch is in the car driving. And as he's driving, there is a song playing that's random. It's super random. It is by The Fix. It's one of the few songs on the soundtrack. There's only one other song besides Bit by Bit, I think, that gets a lot of attention in this movie. But on the soundtrack itself, there's a few other songs. This one's called Letter to Both Sides. It's by The Fix.
Okay.
And then John Farnham has a song. I think that's the one. And that Name of the Game is another one. That's by Dan Hartman, who sings Get Out of Town. And Kim Wilde.
Get out of town.
So the soundtrack, the physical soundtrack, has songs that are not featured in the movie.
Okay.
Anyways, he gets to Swarthout's office, which is a office that's surrounded by a fence because there's a Doberman Pinscher.
Such a good boy. Such a heckin' good boy.
And he's barking at Fletch like crazy. And he walks up to the fence. He goes, "Aw, hello there, fellow. What's your name? Fluff? Fifi?" I thought he said love, but in the subtitles it says Fluff, and then it says Fifi.
Well, when he's being chased by the dog later, he's saying stuff, but it says indistinct underneath.
Yes. So the dog's barking at him. Fletch finds a way to get into the office. He basically climbs up a tree to get onto the roof, and then makes his way into the office while the dog continues to growl from outside. Fletch opens up some files and he starts taking pictures of things in the office from the file cabinet. And then out of nowhere, dog bursts through the window of the office and starts chasing after Fletch. And chases Fletch throughout the office and runs away. And there's unfortunately,
Fletch is like, dog, or he's closing the doors as he's saying stuff. And
I thought he said "oh boy, oh Chevy." That's what I thought.
Oh boy, oh Chevitz. He said, "Oh boy, oh Chevitz," and I know that because that's something my stepdad would say a lot. I don't know where it comes from, but he says it, "Oh boy, oh Chevitz," and that's where the subtitles say indistinct.
Yes. He made oh Chevitz.
So I'm guessing that was improv,
right? Oh, totally. He makes his way out to his car, gets in, and the dog jumps on the front of the car. He's on the hood, facing him and barking, violently at the windshield. Fletch starts taking pictures of him, and he's like, "Come on, smile, say Flesh." And then suddenly he turns the car on. And he goes, "Look, defenseless baby." And then suddenly you hear the dog. It's like ADR, but it sounds like what?
And then the dog sort of jumps off
over the car.
Yeah, and he drives away. Any critiques, by the way, I'm pointing out in this movie, things that I don't like. If we were just doing a roundtable discussion of this, like every other podcast, I probably wouldn't mention them, but we're going scene by scene here. And This is literally the thing I hate the most in this movie. I hate the dog going, what? I hate that.
I actually dislike this whole scene.
Me too. As a whole, like, I don't like it either, but this specifically, giving the dog a what, and then I hated it even more because the what's kind of like a McGruff, like, or it's like a Scooby-Doo, it's like, "Rrr," but the subtitles say dog, what, question mark, and I was like, fuck you.
Yeah, it's really lame. It's lame. It's lame. Fortunately, we're about to be introduced to Shredder.
yes, James Avery.
so we cut back to Fletch's apartment, and he's walking towards his apartment door and singing "Strangers in the Night," but he's changed the lyrics around. What did he sing it to? Or what did he change the lyrics to, Corey?
Strangers in the night, exchanging clothing, strangers in my pants. And as he opens the door, fucking Tony Longo goes, surprise!
And then two detectives grab Fletch. Those two detectives, one of them being Tony Longo. Who's Tony Longo?
Been in Suburban Commando, like a bunch of like, he usually plays like a big goon type of character. Yeah, you've seen him before, but the real standout obviously is James Avery, aka Uncle Phil, aka Shredder.
Right. And the two detectives push him into the living room and they tell him to spread him. And one of the detectives asks him if he's got a gun. And Fletch goes, Shamu's got one, borrow his. And the detective's like searching his pockets and he goes, what do we have here? Fletch goes, that's my dick. And one of the detectives goes, oh, funny. And then he reaches into his own pocket and pulls out a bag of white powder and throws it on the ground. And he goes, what do we have here? And Uncle Phil goes, looks like heroin, Gene. And Fletch goes, hey, you just planted that. And Longo pushes his gun into Fletch's face and he goes, what'd you say? Fletch suddenly kind of shocked goes, you fellas want to read me my rights? And Longo goes, you have the right to remain silent. You have the right to have your face kicked in by me. You have the right to have your balls stomped in by him. And motions over to
Uncle
Phil. And Fletch goes, I think I'll waive my rights.
Yeah.
Cut to the two detectives bringing Fletch into the front desk of the police station.
Yeah, the sergeant or something. They're saying they're gonna take him up to see Chief Garland. I like the sergeant's like, you'll like Chief Garland. He's a nice man. And I like how Fletch goes, yeah, I've heard he's mellowed out a lot since coming out of the closet.
And the sergeant says, you better take a picture of him while he still has a face.
Yeah, seriously.
Cut to the chief's office, and they bring him in to Chief Carlin, played by Joe Don Baker.
Yep.
He's got a big smile on his face. He's like on the phone doing some paperwork or something. Motions to Fletch that he'll be with him in a moment. Fletch then looks around at the pictures.
Who decorated Mrs. Chief?
Yeah. He goes, you decorate this place yourself, or did Mrs. Chief of Police help out? Carlin asks him what his name is, and Fletch just says Fletch.
Fletch.
Yeah, that's when he asks for his full name. Carlin says, I see. Well, what do you do for a living, Mr. Fletch? Fletch goes, I'm a shepherd. Carlin tells the officers to give him some private time with Fletch. And Fletch goes, yeah, why don't you guys go down to the gym and pump each other?
Yeah, and Uncle Phil looks like he wants to punch him, but they leave.
Yeah. After they leave, Carlin says, why are you doing this, Mr. Fletch? Fletch goes,
I like men. I like to be manhandled. I like you.
And he winks at him. Carlin says, for a gentleman who's just been found carrying a bag of heroin. And Fletch goes, hey, that was planted on me. Carlin dismisses that and just says, we're looking at 5, maybe 10 years. Now, is that what you want, Jane Doe? So he knows.
He knows.
He knows. And he knows this because he said, your editor phoned me to respond to allegations you're about to print.
God damn it,
Fucking
Frank.
Frank. Concerning police involvement in narcotics. Carlin tries to be nice with Fletch, and he goes, look, I'm about to bust that beach wide open, and I don't need some Penny Annie, Woodward, and Bernstein to come along getting my way of my men. Fletch goes, well, your men may be the ones involved in this. I think that might interest you. Fletch starts getting up, and then Carlin pushes Fletch back into his chair and calls him an idiot. And he says, all right, strictly off the record to Fletch, and Fletch goes, okay. I got that beach crawling with undercover cops. You come nosing around. You're going to make the bad guys look a little more cautious. Makes my job harder. You print this story this week. Might get some of my men killed. I can't have that, Mr. Fletch. You understand? Fletch says, I understand. Well, I have a deadline. And he gets up and starts to walk out, and he goes, is that Carlin with a K? Insinuating that he's going to print it.
Yeah, I mean, he could have said nothing. He could have just walked away. But no, he has to, because he's we love Fletch, but he's kind of a dick, and he's kind of has to have the last word.
This is that moment. Carlin flips out on him, slams him up against the wall with all the pictures around him. He goes, you can go back on that beach. You won't live to regret it. Fletch looks back and sees a photo of the chief with Tommy Lasorda, the coach of the Los Angeles Dodgers back in the 80s. Very popular, iconic. And Fletch goes, hey, you and Tommy Lasorda? And the chief goes, yeah. Fletch goes, I hate Tommy Lasorda. Smashes the picture, punches it.
And apparently I think this was supposed to be a callback to the one dream sequence that he had, because Tommy Lasorda's in it, but it works by itself. I don't think we need the dream sequence.
No, it's perfect. Cut to Fletch now being brought into a jail cell with the detectives and Chief Carlin.
And I like how, like, Tony Longo's kind of, like, I mean, first off, Tony Longo and Chevy Chase are both very tall men. And, you know, if he walked straight, he's going to hit his head. So Tony Longo doing the cop thing, trying to push him through the door without having him hit his head. You know, I like how Fletch is like, I can do it myself. And then he walks right into it. I mean, it's one of those pratfall type of things, but it kind of gets me every time because he's like, you know, and then he goes right into it.
I love it. And he starts singing, swing low, sweet chariot, coming forward to carry me home. And he says to the chief, because the chief tells his two goons to leave, Fletch says, you can't keep me here, chief. Carlin takes his gun out of his holster and says, maybe I'm going to blow your brains out. And Fletch says, well, I'm no lawyer, but I do believe that's a violation of my rights. Carlin says, no, pulls a switchblade out and says, after I shoot you, I'll stick myself in the arm with this knife. And I'll place it in your dead hand. Self-defense. We don't do it much anymore, but back in the old days. And Fletch goes, you're serious. And Chief says, ask anybody. And Fletch goes, can I ask anybody now? Can I call my mom? Tell her how much I love her?
I like how Chief looks around. He's like, I guess not.
Yep. And then that's when Fletch gets scared. He goes, look, I'm a newspaper reporter. You don't just blow away and then that's when Carlin cocks his gun, points it at him. He said, this is kind of stupid, isn't it? Carlin points the gun at Fletch and says, what'll it be, Fletch? Fletch finally gives in and says, hey, I hate the beach anyways, man. I got a deadline on another story, my series on off-track betting in the Himalayas. Smaller story, but I know you've been following it.
I know, but I know you've been following it.
Finally, he says, I can tell you've got things under control down there. It's your beach. Carlin brings him out, tells him to come out with a big smile on his face. Cut to Fletch going off on Frank in his office. He's like, you called him? What's the matter with you?
And
Walker,
Frank doesn't even believe him.
Frank could give two shits. He's like, Fletch, I'm sorry. And Fletch is like, do you know how close I came to death? God, it's awful.
And I like how Larry's like, yeah. Like, she's totally, like, on Fletch's side. And,
right.
And Frank's kind of like, sure.
Yeah. And Fletch is like, you could have me blown away. Unbelievable. You don't believe me, do you? No. Fletch looks at Larry and goes, he thinks I made it up. Larry's like, unbelievable. What? Frank goes, Fletch, I need an article from you by tomorrow. And Fletch continues with Larry. He's like, you believe me, don't you? And Larry's like, yes, I do. And Frank is like, look, I don't want any of these unsubstantiated charges about dope dealing cops or any of this horse shit. Give me something I can print. Fletch gives him the finger and says, print this. And then Larry says, me too. But when she does, she has to position her fingers because she doesn't know how to flip them off.
Zach, how do you flip somebody off? Do you do this or I
don't do this.
I don't do the way he does it where you stick your other fingers up. Yeah. I do you're making a fist, but you stick the one finger up.
Yeah, you just stick the one finger up. I don't know anybody who does. It's so much effort.
It is so much effort to try to do it right.
Oh, it's all about ball bearings these days, I guess.
Hey everybody, Corey here. I just want to let you know that we'll be right back after these short messages. Hey everybody, Corey here.
And it's me, Zach.
We wanted to tell you about our new show called The Coscarelli Factor.
You can find it on our Patreon at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. The Coscarelli Factor covers every single film that Don Coscarelli has directed. And some other little bonus features in there too, like maybe the music videos he directed as well.
That's right. You can find all the episodes under the Auteur de Force tier on our Patreon page. Like Zach said, that's patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. And if you sign up today, you will get access to the complete Carpenter Factor series, where Zach and I went through every single movie that John Carpenter directed, from Dark Star all the way to, well, all the way till the end. So sign up today to our Patreon page, and you can unlock all kinds of other things as well, like ad-free episodes and our monthly wrap-up After Dark show.
Patreon helps keep the lights on in the podcasting After Dark world. It gets pretty dark out there at night, and all your support keeps us from getting too scared.
And thank you to everyone who's signed up to our Patreon page. We really appreciate it. And as always,
we'll catch you on the dark side.
Hey everybody, I'm Tim.
And I'm Dean.
And we're the hosts of Talking Back. We're a retro-based podcast covering movies, comics, video games, and more.
Check us out every Monday where we hit the rewind button and dig into some of our favorite content from the past. We like to keep things fun, lighthearted, and informative.
Do you feel like you need more nostalgia in your life? Then check out Talking Back. We're available everywhere podcasts are found.
And now, back to the show.
Because next scene we cut to is in the airplane hangar at the Santa Monica Airport, which is still there, by the way. You can go... Yeah. That's very cool. There's, you can go see Harrison Ford almost crash his plane.
Every day, yeah, exactly.
Right.
Now, it's interesting because... So apparently the director was like, hey, I got this hangar. And he talked to the writer. He's like, hey, can you write me a scene in the hangar? And the writer was like, yeah, sure. And he literally wrote this scene on a piece of paper, not with like a typewriter, like just hand wrote it out, and they freaking filmed it like the next day. So
wow.
And it's actually one of the better scenes in the movie, I think, like sort of like standalone, like by itself scene.
Yeah. Well, it's like you said earlier, this is a very important scene as well. All right, so Fletch is now...
he's now G. Gordon Liddy.
Yeah, he's now G. Gordon Liddy. His voiceover kicks in. He says, the time had come to hang out at Boyd Aviation, meet some of the guys, find out what Stanwyck was doing with that plane. I splurged. I invested 49 cents in a set of novelty teeth. Cut to two mechanics working on a plane. Who are those two mechanics?
So one, the kind of goofier one, Bud, is played by Burton Gilliam. He was in Blazing Saddles, by the way.
He's great in that.
Yep. He was also in Back to the Future Part 3. He's also in Paper Moon and Thunderbolt and Lightfoot. The other one is, his name is Willie. And he's played by Beau Starr. He's more of the gruff one of the two. And he was in Halloween 4 and 5. He was the sheriff in those. He was also in Goodfellas as well. So, I mean, they're both like big character actors.
Yeah, Burton, I just absolutely love. He's so funny. He's still live. Well, never mind. Roll that back and delete. Anyways, they kind of look at him, and when they see him, they go, "You the guy from Ajax?" And Fletch goes, "Yep, you bet." Willie goes, I thought you were bringing the 8th. I'm like, what's the 8th? And Fletch goes, "Yeah, well, they're on their way. I'm their supervisor. I don't carry that stuff." Willie goes, "Who's bringing them, Freddie?" And Fletch goes, "Yeah, Freddie." And he goes, "Well, you're supposed to be here an hour ago." And Fletch goes, "Well, traffic was murder. You know, one of those manure spreaders jackknife on the Santa Ana? God awful mess. You should see my shoes."
You should see my shoes. I like how, oh shit, is it Bud? Yeah, it's Bud. I like how Bud looks down. You don't see what he's looking at, but I like how they have a shot of Bud looking at his feet.
And his reaction is like, "Oh, God." So Fletch says, "This plane looks well used." Willie goes, "Well, he flies back and forth to Utah every weekend." Fletch goes, "Is that right? What is he, a Mormon?" Bud laughs and goes, "I don't think he's doing a whole lot of singing with a tabernacle choir."
Yeah, I like how he's got more of that accent.
Yeah. And Willie goes, "These executives, they live hard, you know what I mean?" And Fletch goes, "Oh, I sure do." Fletch whistles and he goes, "Whoo, that's terrific. That's a terrific wing. Love this shape." And Willie goes, hey, do us a favor, pal. Fletch goes, the name's Liddy. Gordon Liddy.
Do us a favor, Gordo.
And he says, take a look at the Fletcher valve, will you? I think it's sticking. And Gordo goes, probably the humidity. And Bud goes, that's funny. Now, what I think it is myself is the bypass line. And Gordo goes, yeah, it could be the bypass line. Yeah, maybe I should take a look at it. So he starts to walk up to the front of the plane. And when he walks up to the front of the plane, he opens up the luggage area. And Bud goes, Gordo, back here? And Fletch goes, don't tell me my business, boy. Just checking the luggage. And he walks over to the windows, walks by the windows. He goes, somebody ought to clean these windows. There's a tremendous buildup of gook all over them. Look at that. And then he's kind of talking to both mechanics. He goes, you use a lot of fuel to go to Utah? And Bud goes, well, that's what I always ask him. Willie goes, that burns enough fuel to go to South America and back.
See, there's the information right there.
And Bud goes, but I always kid him, I say, what are you doing up there? You doing some stunt flying or something? Fletch says, what do you say? And he goes, he don't say nothing. He just gives you that look. He's got that look.
That look.
Willie goes, yeah, he don't say nothing. Just gives him that look. So Fletch goes, well, sure, he's the boss. And let me take a look at this here. And he's like looking up above the engine down. And Willie goes, guard. And he points to the bottom of the engine. And Fletch goes, I know where it is. I'm just getting a bird's eye view here.
Yeah.
Woohoo. And Willie goes, what do you think? The bypass line? Fletch says, I think it's the bypass line. Willie goes, told you.
Crazy cooter coming at you sideways.
And this is when he says, I'll tell you what I'm going to need, guys. I'm going to need some pliers and a 30-weight set of ball bearings. And then Bud goes, what? He goes, tell you what, I got to go to my truck. Fred gets here before I'm back. You can tell him to start without me. And Willie goes, what the hell do you need ball bearings for?
Oh, come on, guys. It's so simple. Maybe you need a refresher course. He puts his arm up, sing a sizzle. Hey! And I like how they even had in the subtitles it says sizzle, He goes, it's all ball bearings nowadays. Now you prepare that Fetzer valve with some 3-in-1 oil and some gauze pads. And I'm going to need about 10 quarts of antifreeze, preferably Prestone. No, make that Quaker State. And wash those windows. They've got filth muck on them.
And he says it in a Midwestern way that my mom says wash. He says wash. Wash those windows.
Oh, my God. So, all right. Is that a Midwestern thing? Because my mom, she grew up in Maryland, and apparently it's a Maryland thing to say warsh, like W-A-R-S-H. I didn't know if that was Midwestern, but maybe Midwestern as well. But my mom always says warsh.
Yeah, same with my mom. Washing the car.
They both go,
Zacky.
But dude, I love filth muck on them.
Me too. I love that. Cut to Fletch in the back at the racket club, and he's in the restaurant, and his waiter from earlier, his good buddy, walks up and says hi to him, and Fletch asks where Mrs. Stamwick is, and he says she's in her cabana. He goes, oh, yeah, I was supposed to meet her there. Cabana 6, right? He goes, Cabana 1. He goes, oh, yeah, right. And the waiter, who's his pal, he's like, would you like something to eat or drink? And Fletch goes, in fact, I would. He goes, charge it to the Underhills? And Fletch goes, yeah, that's right. Have any caviar? And the waiter says, yes, but it's $80 a portion. He goes, well,
better only order two.
How about the lobster thermidor? And he goes, oh, I recommend that, senor. He goes, good. That'll be fine. Bring 2 bottles of Dom Perignon and Cabana 1 and put down $30 for yourself, okay? And he walks away. He's like, this is the nicest place.
I love it.
Walks up to Cabana 1, knocks on the door, and Gail asks who it is. And he goes, it's John. She goes, John who? He goes, John Lev. And she goes, John Cocktoastin? He goes, yeah. And she opens the door, and she's opening up the door, and she's got a towel on, and she's only wearing a towel on her head and around her top.
Oh, mamma mia.
And she says hi, and he goes, I was hoping you'd say that. She goes, I just got out of the shower. I just got out of the shower. He goes, yeah. Can I borrow your towel a sec? My car just hit a water buffalo. She laughs and brings him in. He goes, nice place you have here. And she goes, I'm surprised to see you. What are you doing here? He goes, I ordered some lunch. And she goes, you ordered it here? And he goes, well, this is where I knew my mouth would be.
I love that. I love that.
That line is amazing.
It is. It is.
And she goes, I really should change. He goes, oh, no, I think you should stay the same wonderful person you are today. She goes, I mean, put clothes on. He goes, and then she goes, really make yourself comfortable. Cut to Fletch lying on her bed with his shoes on, by the way. Who does that?
Of course. Well, it's not her bed. She's not sleeping there. It's just the cabana.
Yeah. And she goes, are you always this forward? He goes, only with wet married women. There's a knock at the door. He gets it. It's the waiters bringing all the food in.
It's a full spread. I like how he goes, they ask if they can set it up. And he's like, no, I'll do it. And he's like, gives them tips as well. Charge it to the Underhills. And they're like, oh, mucho gracias. He's like, Sierra del Fuego.
Yeah, Sierra del Fuego. Oh, man. Cut to Gail, all refreshed, sitting on the couch with him as he pops a champagne and pours her a glass, pours himself a glass, and pours some of the champagne back into the actual bin that holds the champagne.
Is that a thing?
I think it.
Okay.
All I know is I did it for years because of this movie. I don't think it's a thing.
So whether this was a thing or not, you made it a thing.
I made it a thing and probably wasted some champagne in the process.
Yeah.
She goes, how do you know the Underhills?
He goes, I saved his life during the war. She goes, you were in the war? No, he was. I got him out. What does that mean?
God.
Like, it's just, I love how fast it is. No, he was. I got him out.
That's what I love about it.
I know.
It's like, who's Frida? My secretary.
Yeah.
Who are you? I'm her boss.
I'm her boss.
Duh. So cut to the Mr. Underhill getting ready to leave for his lunch, and he looks at his bill. $400 for lunch. Jesus H. Christ. 2 bottles of Dom Perignon. And
again, think of it as nowadays, that's a $1,200 bill.
Right. And the waiter's like, he goes, who got all this? And the waiter's like, your guest, senor. He goes, where is he? He's with Mrs. Stanwyck. This is crazy. And he tells Mr. Underhill where to go. Cut back to Fletch and Gail. And he goes, well, why'd you let me in? She goes, because I'm bored. He goes, if you're so bored, why don't you go to Utah with Alan? She goes, Utah is not exactly a cure for boredom. He goes, that's a good point.
Utah. She does say she's never been there, and that was unfair. But I shouldn't
say that. Yeah.
I was like, no. I think you were right the first time. Sorry to all our Utah listeners.
Right. He goes, well, what about his parents? They live there? She goes, well, he hasn't seen them for years, so I've never met them. Note that as well.
Yeah.
Suddenly, there's a knock at the door, and it's Mr. Underhill. Mrs. Stanwyck? She goes, yes. He goes, I'm sorry to disturb you. He's very actually kind of polite at this moment. He goes,
he's polite to her, but yeah, he's still pissed off.
He goes, it's Ted Underhill here. And then Fletch suddenly goes, oh, thanks for a great time. And he looks at his bare arm like there's a watch there. And he goes, whoo, look at the time. Got to go. And she goes, wait, hold on a second. And she holds him back. Underhill says, someone of your acquaintance has charged a $400 lunch to my account. And Gail says, John, you don't know the Underhills? Fletch shakes his head like, no. And suddenly cut to Underhill, and he's like, I appreciate the opportunity of discussing this matter with you. Cut to Fletch imitating Gail and go, I'm just out of the shower. He goes, I just have to wee-wee. And Underhill goes, oh, yes, of course.
He's like, yes, of course.
Cut to Fletch starting to make his escape out the back window of the cabana. And she goes, why'd you do it? And Fletch goes, well, I didn't think it would be fair for you to pay the bill. She goes, a $400 lunch tab? He goes, yeah, that's what I mean. It's outrageous. She goes, I'll cover it. She can, if she's got $3 million to give away.
Oh, yeah. And, that's the only thing I was like, so Mr. Underhill kind of doesn't get any comeuppance, Well, he does technically pay for the Rio de Janeiro trip, but you know what I mean? Like, she still pays it.
Right, exactly. She tells him that she's going to have him change because she's like, you can't go out of the cabana looking like, because Fletch is wearing his white tennis outfit. So she gives him a suit to change into. It's one of Alan's old suits. She goes, you look like you're the same size as Alan. Note that as well.
I know, and that's actually a big one. That's the crutch of the entire movie, and or the plot, I should say, like Alan's plot. And sometimes, like, it's one of those things where, like, multiple viewings really helps this movie. Not just because it's fucking hilarious and you should watch it multiple times, but a lot of times the giant pieces of information that are important, they don't have any pomp and circumstance to them in the scene.
Right.
Sometimes you don't know what is the important piece of information until maybe the next scene or later. But then you go back and rewatch it and you're like, oh, this one piece of dialogue is literally the point of this entire scene.
Exactly. And she says right after that, Fletch comments on how nice the suit is, and she says, just return it, wink. Mm-hmm. And she goes, any other surprises? He goes, yeah, my name's not John Cocktoastin, and I wasn't at your wedding. I'm Irwin Fletcher, and I write a newspaper column under the name Jane Doe, and it's not the food section. Your husband hired me to kill him. Cut back to Underhill, pounding on the door now. Mrs. Stanwyck! And she calls back, in a minute, Gail does. She goes, what the hell are you talking about? Fletch sits her down on the couch, or on the bed in the cabana room, and she goes, and he says, your husband told me he was dying of cancer. Is that true? No, it's not true. The ranch property you thought you were buying in Utah? Not true. He's a bad guy, Gail. He's involved in something very big and very bad. You know a guy named Jim Swarthout? And Gail says, yeah, he's the man who sold us our ranch. And Fletch says, wrong. He sold you $3,000 worth of scrub brush. And she's like, no, I saw the deed.
$3 million worth of scrub brush.
Sorry, $3 million, yeah. So he says, wrong. He sold you $3 million worth of scrub brush. And she goes, no, I saw the deed. Fletch says, you saw a forgery. He pulls out some photos and he shows her, this is the real deed. This is Swarthout's name. If all of this was legible, you'd see what I mean.
It's all blurry and everything. You can barely see it.
And he's
like
starts
showing her more pictures.
Yeah, he's like, this is a dog that tried to bite me.
Tried to bite me. Here's the hotel I stayed in. Here's the car. The dog tried to bite that.
Here's the Mormon tabernacle.
Yeah.
She's like, okay, stop it. Fletch goes, he gets serious. He goes, he told me a lot of things. So far, not one of them has been true. I'm sorry to tell you all these things. Cut back to Underhill. Mrs. Stanwyck! Screaming. She tells him to wait. She goes, I'm going to call my father. And Fletch goes, no, you can't. He goes, I know you don't know me from a hole in the wall, but you got to trust me. Just give me 24 hours. Fletch gets ready to leave, and then he suddenly says, Laker fan? And she goes, no. Cut back to Underhill screaming. Cut back to Fletch saying, I'll take you to a game. Takes his suit jacket coat and he jumps out the window. Cut back to Underhill pounding on the door. Mrs. Stanwyck! She opens up the door, takes the bill out of his hands, says, oh, thanks, bye, and closes the door in his face.
Yeah. It's a funny conclusion because it's such a small conclusion and his energy is so high.
It's so high, and it's kind of funny. It's kind of a burn on him. She runs back to Fletch before he leaves out the window, and she goes, what are you talking about? Fletch goes, I'm talking about how much I'd like to take you to a Laker game, and tells her if he needs her to call the paper. And she goes, what am I supposed to do for the next 24 hours? He says, act natural. She goes, I was afraid you'd say that.
Yeah.
Cut back to Fletch following Stanwyck in his car. Follows Stanwyck to a gas station where he's loading up gas cans and puts them in the trunk of his Jaguar. Continues to follow Stanwyck where he sees Stanwyck on the freeway overpass over the 101 in downtown LA. And I'm like, that's filled with homeless encampments now.
Yeah. I was wondering where that was. I sort of recognized it. Wasn't quite sure.
And I'm like, wherever he is watching him from, that's filled with cars. And there's always traffic, always traffic. So he's tailing Stanwyck. He sees Stanwyck pull up in front of a cop car. And he gets out of his own car and goes into the cop car. And who's sitting in the cop car with him but Chief Carlin? Fletch out loud thinks to himself, what is he doing with the chief? Cut back to Fletch driving back home to Santa Monica. His voiceover kicks in. Seeing bone cancer and Chief Carlin together might lead to a page one item, but without any real evidence, Frank wouldn't even print it in the want ads. I have to keep digging without a shovel. I love that he calls him bone cancer.
I know.
Pulls up to his own house, gets out of the car, and he goes through his fire escape again like he did earlier when the lawyer was there.
Do you think he would have to, though? Because he'd already paid the lawyer.
Yeah, but what was the instinct? Well, because the last time he went to his front door, there were cops there.
cops there. Yeah, good point. Oh, look at that. Not even a problem right there. That was not even a hole.
Not even a problem. But what he notices
what is a problem?
What is a problem is he can see his under the garage under the apartment complex, and he looks in the window of the garage and he sees a bunch of cop cars down there. He freaks out and bolts and runs down the street. One of the cops spots him down in the garage. They turn their lights on and start trailing Fletch. He runs down the street that sees a teenager in an Alfa Romeo car. That teenager, by the way, was in the movie 315, The Moment of Truth, and we called it out in that breakdown.
Yep, it's his name is David W. Harper. He also played Jim Bob Walton on The Waltons. And yeah, he was in 315, The Moment of Truth. He only has like 6 or 7 credits or something, but he's great. I mean, this scene, Dr. Jellyfingers being my favorite scene and everything, all that whole section. I love this because this chase that we're about to see, it's funny because it's not about the chase. It's about Fletch and this kid and sort of their discussion, like their sort of interactions during the chase. It adds this great layer to it that, like, I don't know any other movie, like comedy, action, or otherwise, that sort of has this, like this setup. This kid is stealing this car, and now Fletch is stealing it, but the kid's with him, and the kid is terrified.
Kid's terrified. Fletch is pretending to be a smog patrol.
Yeah.
And then when he gets in the car with him and takes off, he's driving like a maniac. Kick In, Get Out of Town by Dan Hartman, which is a banger.
Dude. Get out of town, get out of town. Go north to Alaska or south to Rio. It's so good, dude.
You are so not a singer. You are so not a singer.
I'm not.
My God. When you hear the replay of this, you're going to be like, I wasn't even on beat.
No, I'm terrible. I'm fucking horrible.
Oh my God. I got to take you karaokeing.
No, I hate karaoke and I suck at it.
Yeah, I'm going to force you to do it. So it's so funny because, like, at one point he's like, why don't you just close your eyes and get some shut eye? Just lay back and enjoy this.
I like how the kid's like, you a cop? He's like, as far as you know.
Yeah. And they're racing down the road. It is an insane car chase scene because
it's one of those car chase scenes where they look like they're actually going fast.
Yeah, and it looks like maybe they're on the 405. No, probably the 10. It's probably I don't know.
I guess
it's hard to tell. It's like on surface streets. It actually doesn't look like any freeway in Los Angeles to me. Anyways, turns out that's when it's revealed that the kid was trying to steal the car.
Well, I mean, I think it was pretty obvious from the beginning.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, they actually talk about it now.
Right. And then a cop, one of the cops on the PA is like yelling, pull over. And the kid's freaking out. And he's like, Fletch is like, don't worry. This is a nice little game I like to play with my buddies. Kind of like a hide and seek kind of thing. They love it. And then another police officer's yelling at him in his car. He's like, can you hear me? Pull over. And Fletch goes, I did pull over earlier.
I love that.
I'll pull over later.
Because I'll pull over later. That's great.
And then at one point,
he kind of slipstreams from around the truck, and I like how he goes, "Oh, there's Freddy."
Yeah,
he's like, do a little strip slamming, and whoa, there's Freddy. Won't he be surprised? The bike cop's like, pull over. He's like, hey, Freddy, how's the herpes? Does it hurt? And that's actually it's Freddy who says, pull over, and he's like, I did pull over before. I'll pull over later.
Right, exactly. That cop flies off his motorcycle. Looks like he could have broken both his arms, by the way.
It was a good stunt.
Yeah, and
we saw one of the cops like flip over too and everything. I mean, it's an exciting chase sequence with a lot of comedy. It's like equal amount of comedy as it is excitement, you know?
Right. It eventually ends with Fletch pulling up to like a banquet hall or something, like in the delivery area of the banquet hall,
like an Elks Lodge type of thing.
Yeah, he gets out of the car. He takes his hat on that he had, and he tells the kid, he's like, congratulations, you passed the test. Now raise your left hand. And the kid puts his left hand up, and he goes, make a fist. And he puts his hat on the kid's fist. He goes, my man will be right with you, and just walks off. Runs in through the loading dock in the back area where there's like a kitchen. And as he does, he grabs a box of food and walks past some of the people in the kitchen and grabs a coat off the coat rack, puts it on so he looks like one of the waiters in the lodge. and he's like yells out something in Spanish, but it's like he's just making up gibberish. He's like,
yeah, the subtitles say mock Spanish.
Yeah, it's definitely mock Spanish. Cut to inside this banquet hall where they're having this big, like, congratulatory, of all these elderly Elks Lodge type people.
For Fred the Dorfman.
Yes. And he's like walking around pretending to be a waiter at the tables. A guy goes to take a drink out of his glass, and he takes the guy water glass, and he takes the water out of the guy's hand as he's drinking, and he gives it to another woman. Yeah. Picks up dirty plates and he puts it on another guy's table. It's hilarious. And the cops are starting to make their way into the lodge. And as they do, the man at the dais, the podium, who's talking, is about to introduce the beloved leader of their group. And he's like, and the guy's like, a man who needs no introduction. And suddenly Fletch stands up in the middle of the crowd. He goes, thank you very much, Sammy. Thank you. I couldn't wait, but there was such a nice introduction. I'm so thrilled to be here with you today. It's a wonderful ceremony so far here on behalf of our own Fred the Dorfman.
But I like how he's like, on behalf of, and then he has to look back, and you can tell he's like thinking, he's like, why the hell is his name Fred Dorfman? And he's like, Fred the Dorfman. Right. Love it. I love it when you call somebody, well, we kind of did a similar bit on The Gate with Dwarf on Dwarf,
Dwarf on Dwarf.
Yeah. But now, apparently there's some tie to Animal House because Fred Dorfman was the name of Kent Flounder Dorfman's brother in National Lampoon's Animal House.
Well, there's a nice little reference. That's cool. Yeah. Fun fact. The guy at the podium is like, who is this guy, right?
Who the fuck?
If Fletch continues, he's like, many of you don't know that Fred was darn near death recently, and he wasn't ashamed to admit to me that he had syphilis. Thank God that he
normals again.
Cut to Dorfman looking like, what the fuck? And Fletch goes, thank God he stopped it in its tracks. I got to tell you, it takes a lot for a man to admit where he got it from and how he got it. And I must say, look at him today. Fred, you look just wonderful. The nose looks normal again. The face has come back into shape. And Dorfman like mouths, I don't know him. Fletch continues. He goes, he's not drooling anymore. It's a good sign. Hats off to Marge, his wife, because that whole experience there, 2 or 3 weeks that she stayed in Trembling Hills, has paid off. No more alcohol or sedatives in her life.
Oh my God, it's so good.
God.
It's so good. I love this scene so much.
It's so great. And so
the whole time the cops are kind of like converging on him.
Slowly making their way in, and Fletch makes his way up to the podium where Sammy has the microphone. He grabs it out of his off the podium, and he looks at the speaker, and it goes, Sammy, you're not going to sing for us, are you? And Sammy like kind of laughs uncomfortably.
Yeah.
And he goes, did you know that Fred spent a good deal of his life honoring a profession that has gone largely unsung around here? Some of those boys are here tonight. That profession, of course, is law enforcement. I know Fred feels this way. Too often our feelings are locked in. We feel restrained, perhaps even embarrassed to actually reach out and touch an officer of the law. After all, they are people, aren't they? So why not stand up and pat them on the back? Reach out. Go ahead. Shake hands with any of these guys. Suddenly, everyone just starts standing in the whole crowd and starts hugging the cops, grabbing them. Hug a cop. Yeah, go ahead. I said it.
Cop.
Go ahead. I said it. Yeah, it's a powerful feeling. I'm so proud tonight. He takes his hat off because he's wearing like a waiter's hat, and he's like, oh, say, can you see? He starts singing the national anthem, and they all start singing, and he goes, proudly we hail, and he goes, come on, hip, hip, hooray! Everyone's cheering, and that's when Fletch drops the microphone and bolts for the door.
Dude, it's so good. And so I was actually looking through Bill Henderson's filmography, who plays Sammy, aka Speaker. He was in fucking Clue. He was in Murphy's Law. He's been in like so many fucking things. MacGyver, like an episode of Give Me a Break, 227, just a bunch of shit. He was in Maverick. Remember that movie, Maverick?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
I love that movie back in the day, but no one talks about that film. He's also in Buckaroo
movie?
Banzai. He was in City Slickers.
Oh yeah, he's a prolific character actor.
Very much so.
And Sammy in this one.
Yes.
Cut to LAX, where you actually can talk to someone at a booth, and they're nice to you.
I know. And this clerk is played by Allison LaPlaca. I always know her as Rachel Green's boss on Friends.
Yes, that's right. It's exactly where I remembered her from as well. Fletch is posing as Alan Stanwyck, and she's speaking to him as Alan, saying, "You're confirmed on Pan Am flight to Rio de Janeiro tomorrow night, first class." And Fletch goes, "That's terrific, thank you." And she goes, "You reconfirmed this morning." And Fletch goes, "You bet I did. I'm a bear for details." I hope there's nobody sitting next to me. See, I always love to travel first class and take up both seats. I'm in bridge construction, and these foldouts take a tremendous amount of space, and I need space. And she goes, "I'm afraid there's someone sitting next to you." He goes, "Oh, for God, Don. Who is it, Mr. Cinnamon?" She goes, "No, the name is Kavanaugh." He goes, "Oh, yes. Morris or Pierre?" She goes, "Sally Ann."
Sally Ann.
And he goes, "Oh, Sally Ann. Well, terrific." And she goes, "In fact, you purchased the ticket for Miss Kavanaugh." He goes, "Doesn't mean I want her sitting next to me, does it?" And she goes, "I'm sorry, sir. Flight's full. She's connecting out of Provo." He goes, "Oh, right. Provo, Spain?" She goes, "No,
Provo,
Utah."
Spain.
He goes, Utah. Cut back to Fletch on the phone at the airport saying, "Look, Frank," he's talking to Frank, "don't give me any crap about the beach story. I'm at the airport." And Frank's like, "The airport?" And he goes, "There are at least 24 cops after my ass. I can't go to my house. Can't go to the office. I'm a man without a country, Frank." Cut to Frank in his office. While he's talking, there's another guy in there, another reporter.
Another reporter. Old asshole.
And Frank's like, very nicely, goes, "Fletch, these cops that are after you. You come in here. You'll be okay."
Fletch is like, "I won't even make it through the front door."
Yeah, he goes, "I'm going to Utah." Frank goes, "You go to Utah, you stay in Utah. I'm turning this story over to a professional reporter." And he points to the other guy. The other guy smiles, the biggest fucking smile I've ever seen in my goddamn life.
Biggest shit-eating grin I've ever seen. And at the same time, like, an assistant or somebody brings in, like, food for them. And that sandwich, whatever that, like, I know it's supposed to be a Reuben or something for Frank, but it's gross looking.
Yeah, didn't eat very healthy in the 80s.
No.
By the way, something in the 80s I loved that I just started bringing back into my normal rotation, combos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, man. I was a combo kid back in the day. Pizza. The pizza flavored combos.
Dude, the only one this place has is the pretzel with cheese on the middle, but it's so good.
Classic. Okay.
Yeah, classic. Basically, Frank says, "You go to Utah, fine. If your story's not on my desk by 11:30, you're out of a job." Cut to Fletch getting in his car, driving down a road. He's going to a house. Gets to the house. Turns out it's Sally Ann Kavanaugh's house.
Yeah, and this is all this area I don't think is actually Utah. Even though he's supposed to be in Utah right now, yeah. I think this is definitely the valley.
It's funny because he opens up the mailbox, which has her name on it, or right next to it, and he pulls out a letter from Ed McMahon, Publishers Clearinghouse, and he smiles. Yep. Goes inside the house, and he lights a cigarette, which is like totally out of character. Doesn't really matter that much.
No, but
the lighter comes into play later.
But he doesn't smoke the entire movie. And actually, like I'm trying to think if Chevy Chase actually smokes, because it doesn't even look like he smokes in this scene. Like, meaning like it doesn't look like he's even like taking drags in this scene.
Yeah, it's really weird. I think the only reason they do this is to for the finale to make sense when he has a lighter in his pocket.
Oh, yeah, good fucking point. You're right. That's actually probably why it's here, but it feels very unnatural for him. Now, I do like the shot when he's in the kitchen and he gets his head sort of stuck in the lights. Like, you know that's improv, but it's good, man. It's fucking solid.
Yeah, he goes in this house and it's the house is empty. The refrigerator has like moldy food in it. And he makes his way upstairs. And when he goes upstairs, he goes into the bedroom upstairs, and he's shuffling around in a desk. And as he's doing that, side table, you see a guy start walking out from the shadows down the hallway and coming towards him.
Holding a shotgun. And this guy, the watchman, is played by Joe Praml, Praml. He was in Moving, a movie that you and I both love.
I love Moving.
I know you do. He was in that, but he was also in an episode of Hardcastle and McCormick.
drive. Yeah, dude.
Go listen to our TV Obscure episode with the where we talk about the live action theme songs. And
Woo, baby.
That makes the list.
It sure does. So Fletch at this point, Fletch is now looking under a bed, and the watchman yells out, "Get up! Who the hell are you? Get up!" And Fletch like jumps up, raises both hands. "I'm up."
I love this guy's like inflection. I love how he talks.
So Fletch goes, "The door was unlocked." Watchman goes, "Lock's busted." And Fletch goes, "Well, there you have it. I work for the landlord. Told me to watch out for the place." Fletch goes, "Well, I commend him on his choice." What?
I commend him on his choice.
I was supposed to meet Mrs. Kavanaugh here. Who are you? I'm Don Corleone, Mrs. Kavanaugh's cousin. You know where she is? Moved out.
She moved out.
Moved out. Isn't that something? I just talked to her last week. She didn't say a thing about it. She moved out. So you're saying she moved out?
So you're saying she moved out? I love that line.
Like, you are an idiot.
Because I love how he says it. She moved out. He's like, so you're saying she moved out? It's great. It's fucking genius.
This morning. Gosh, we had so much to talk about, Fletch says. Mo Green is out.
The Godfather reference, yeah.
Mo Green is out of the Tropicana now. My sons, Mike and Fredo, are taking over. What do you want under the bed? The guy says. He goes, "I'm afraid I'm going to have to pull rank on you. I didn't want to have to do this. I'm with the mattress police." There's no tags on these.
There's no tags on these mattresses.
And he says, "I have to take you downtown. Now give me the weapon." And the guy cocks the shotgun. He's like,
yeah.
And then Fletch whistles. He's like, "Whew." Guy goes, "I'm calling the cops.
This is for the cops." This is for the cops. It's like he's sort of drunk, but he's not.
No. He's backwoods.
He is.
He's like, Fletch is like, "Come on, man. Well, yeah, I'm her cousin. Tell the cops." Okay, you want to call the cops? Call the cops. He looks down at the guy's shoes and he goes, "But you better tie your shoes first." And the watchman looks down, and that's when the Fletch kicks him in the balls, and the guy doubles over.
Dude, he sends that dude's balls through his mouth, man. He kicks him hard.
He sure does. Have you ever been kicked really hard in the balls?
Yes, I mean we all have by accident or something, but we all know the pain. I've never been kicked hard like on purpose. Like I was this guy, she moved out. I was never that guy, but I've been kicked as hard, but by accident.
I was in a karate tournament, and when I was like, I don't know, 13, and I had a cup on, and this kid who had hit me, this is when I broke my nose too. He hit me in the nose first, and he got a penalty for that. And then I scored 2 points on him, and then he just punted me in the crotch, direct front kick in the balls, and it didn't hit my balls, it hit the cup, but the cup, it hit me so hard that ring around the cup just penetrated my groin area.
Yeah.
And all I remember at that point is water flooded up through my mouth, and I spit my mouthpiece out with all this water out, and I doubled over on the ground.
He killed you.
And I hear
fucking fatality to you.
The coach, the referee's like, "Point, winner."
Like that's all you had to do to win? Just kick me in the balls?
Basically, he took a point away from the guy, and the kid lost based on disqualification points.
Oh, point winner to you. Okay.
So Fletch runs out of the house, gets in his car, takes off. The guy runs out. I wasn't able to get up after I got my balls exploded.
No.
But this guy gets up, blasts a shotgun, and blows the window out the back of the guy's Fletch's car. And Fletch goes,
"Thank you.
Thanks a lot." Whew. Cut to an exterior of the motel he was at earlier, talking to Larry on the phone. He calls her Stretch, and he's basically telling her he's got an unbelievable story. Tells her to write down the name Sally Ann Kavanaugh. He says, check every hotel in L.A., start with the ones near the airport. He, meaning Stanwyck, is supposed to leave the country with her tonight. He goes, "You got that, honey? I love your body, Larry." And that's
and
when
the same manager looks back. The same one that like she looked back when he said, $3 million was no big deal and everything. But yes, and I guess it's kind of, when you think about it, her name being Larry, I'm sure it's a bigger deal in the book or whatever, but like her name being Larry, this is the joke payoff essentially.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a big deal. In the 80s, it was like, oh, it's a homophobic reference, whatever, you know.
I know, but now, I mean, I love it. I mean, you and I both say, I love your body, Larry. Like,
Yeah,
it's just a
all the
regular
time.
thing that we say because it's a great line, man.
It is, and I have a friend named Larry, and I say that to him as well, so it's
Yeah.
perfect.
I've never met Larry. Maybe I will one day.
I hope you do someday. He lives in Gilroy, I think, which is like hard to get to.
Gilroy, what, California?
Yeah, so it's like south of San Jose.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So probably not unless he comes down to L.A. with his wife,
Yeah,
Tracy.
there you go.
Shout out to them if they're listening. Cut to a pig farm. Velma Stanwyck is on the porch. Fletch gets out of the car. Marvin Stanwyck is watching. Fletch introduces himself. Marvin says, howdy.
I like how Marvin looks at the rear window. That's the windshield that's exploded. It's gone. And I like how Fletch says, they ought to recall these things. You get one good bump out here and boom, whole rear window explodes.
He asks
if none of this has to be in here, but it's great.
So great. He asks if the old man is Marvin Stanwyck. Guy says, yeah. He goes, I'm Harry S. Truman from Caswell Insurance Underwriters. Marvin says, Harry S. Truman. Fletch goes, yeah, well, my parents are big fans of the former president. Marvin says, isn't that nice? He was a good man. Fletch goes, sure was. Marvin says, he sure showed the Japs a thing or two. Fletch goes, yep, dropped the big one. Marvin says, he dropped 2 big ones. He was a real fighter. Yeah.
Interesting that they kind of play up Marvin as, he runs a farm, but he's not like city-wise kind of guy, but he's also the only person in the movie that sort of felt like or understood that Fletch's name was, like he called it out. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I think that's kind of saying something.
Yeah, no, it is saying something. And that's when, Marvin's a little suspicious. He goes, you're in the insurance line, Harry? Fletch goes, that's right. He goes, well, I'm fully covered. And Fletch goes, oh, I don't doubt that. Actually, my company's sub-insurers of the subsidiary carriers of a policy held by Alan Stanwyck, who I believe is your son. Marvin says, yeah, he is, Mr. Truman. Marvin introduces Fletch to the wife, Velma, and they come sit down on the porch, have a glass of lemonade. And when they do, Marvin says,
straw. He's trying to use it. I like it.
Before that happens, Marvin says, Velma makes the most unusual lemonade. And I'm like, what does she put in it?
Why is it unusual?
Yeah, what's so unusual about it? And that's when Fletch is struggling with the straw. He can't put it in his mouth. And he goes,
it doesn't need to happen, but it's great.
And that's when Marvin looks at him and goes, where are you from, Harry? And Fletch goes, I'm from California. San Bernardino. There's no San Bernardino, by the way, in California.
I didn't think there was.
I think he's meant to say San Bernardino, but... And then that's when Fletch asks him a couple questions. And he starts asking them questions. He goes, you are Marvin and your wife, Velma. He goes, you are alive, right?
Well, I like how Marvin's like, what now? Come on now.
Yeah, right. And Fletch asks, when's the last time they saw Alan? Marvin and Velma say, about 10 days ago. Didn't Gail say he hadn't seen him in years?
Yep.
Fletch writes that down 10 days ago. Marvin says, yeah, he comes and visits us about every 3 weeks. Fletch goes, isn't that nice? How long's he been doing that? Marvin says, since he moved to L.A. Okay. And that's when Fletch goes, well, pardon me if I get a little personal here, but we understand there's a young lady friend here. And suddenly Marvin and Velma get very kind of upset. Or Marvin does. And he goes, what's that got to do with insurance?
Oh, it's got everything to do with insurance.
That's what Fletch says. And Marvin says, well, you can forget about that lady friend business. Alan's the most loving husband a girl could have. He dotes on that bride of his. Fletch goes, who? Velma says, his wife. Fletch goes, you met her? Marvin goes, of course we have. Brings her with him. Fletch goes, has Alan ever mentioned the name Sally Ann Kavanaugh to you?
Boy.
Marvin says, boy, what the hell's the matter with you? Oh, he has then, Fletch says. Of course he has. That's his wife. Of course. His wife's name is Sally Ann Kavanaugh then. And Velma goes, cute as a button. Fletch asks if they got a picture, and Velma says, oh, sure. And she goes off to go get it. And Fletch asks if they're still married. Marvin says, yes, they've been married for 8 years come April. It's before he moved to L.A. Velma comes out with this giant photo album. She pulls out a photo of Stanwyck with Sally Ann, and Stanwyck's making the same thumbs up, I'm an asshole, A pose in the picture.
I'm an asshole, yo-de-yo.
Right. Fletch asks if he can borrow the photo, and they say sure. And then Velma wants to show him more pictures, and he goes,
"You want to see the reception?" "No, I'm trying to quit."
I'm trying to quit. Oh my God. Cut to...
Oh, real quick. So I always found it kind of odd. You never see Sally Ann Kavanaugh in this movie, like the actor, like in person. You only see her through this picture.
Yeah.
So I have always felt that was kind of a big piece of the puzzle that was missing. Obviously, he loves her. He's gonna flee the country with her. So Gale was just for the money. He just married her for the money. Although I'm sure he cares about Gale, because at the end, when she's there, he does seem kind of like, oh, I didn't want this to happen. You know what I mean? But
not wanting someone to die is a whole hell of a lot different than not caring about them.
Right. But Sally Ann Kavanaugh is who he actually loves, though.
Yes, totally. Yeah, and he's been committed to her, sort of.
Yeah. So I always kind of wish, like, I knew if she was in on it and stuff like that, Like, we just don't get anything, like, resolution-wise with her.
No, we don't. We don't, which they could make a whole other movie, Her Revenge on Fletch.
Right? Sally Ann Kavanaugh's Revenge.
Ooh. David Irons, are you listening? I know you're listening. That's a great idea.
Go right.
Why do I sound Australian? God damn it. David, I'm working on it.
God damn it.
That's a great idea. I like that. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, cut to Gale. Cut to Fletch with Gale at the cabana. And she's pissed because he's showing her the photo that he got from Alan's parents. She goes, I can't believe this. Fletch goes, it really is Alan, and it's really big of me. As a kid, I'm like, big of him? It's big of him?
Big of me.
And I'm like, oh, big of me. Oh. But I always thought he was saying big of me.
Ah, interesting.
And she asks how long they've been married. She's like, who is this woman? Fletch goes, I don't know. I think it's his sweetheart named Sally Ann something. And Fletch goes, he's been keeping a lot of secrets lately. Gale says, I'm calling the police. And he goes, you can't call the police. She goes, then I'm calling my father. He goes, just give me one more day. She's like, do you know how humiliating this is? He goes, yes, I do. I really do.
And I believe he does because yeah, the divorce and everything. So again, when I was younger, lines like that kind of didn't matter to me. But now that I'm like really intently watching,
matters.
I'm like, oh, I felt like that was a genuine moment from Irwin. You know what I mean? Like, not from Fletch. It was a genuine moment from Irwin M. Fletcher. And I think he does know what it feels like to have someone lie to you and cheat on you and everything.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Totally agree. I love it. And he basically tells her, like, look, you stay away from the house tomorrow night. Just give me one more day. Give me one more day and I'll take care of him. And then she looks at the picture again and she's like, look at her. She looks like a hooker. Look at her. She goes, could you love someone like that? And Fletch goes, are you kidding?
Of course not. 5-10 minutes tops.
And she says, that's funny. And he goes, I know. Listen. He goes, I know. Listen, why don't we both relax and go in there and lie down and I'll fill you in. She goes, well, this is a really good time to make a pass at me. They go into the...
He fucks her.
Yeah. And he basically fucks her. Yeah.
Do you think she's just staying at that cabana now and not going home?
I think he met her there, but she's like dressed up, right?
Yeah, I know, but it's still the cabana though. They're there, aren't they?
After
they're not
hours.
They're not at the house.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cut to one of the funniest scenes of Chevy Chase dancing in a hippie outfit. He basically looks like a guru on roller skates in Santa Monica. And he rolls/falls over to Sam's hut. As he does, Gummy's over there. And Gummy doesn't even know it's him. And when he realizes it's him, he starts getting excited and he tells him like to calm down, basically. He's like, look, I got to talk to you. Because there's cops all around here, and they're after you.
And I like how Gummy's like, you mean those surfers over there?
Yeah.
Because they're so obviously cops, and I just love how Gummy could immediately see them,
It cuts to the surfers on the cop. They're on a cop car, looking like cops in
surf
wetsuits.
outfits.
Yeah. This is when Fletch comes clean. He goes, Those cops are after me because I'm a newspaper reporter and I'm nailing Chief Carlin as the major drug source on the beach. And he says Fat Sam is turning state's evidence. He wrote a very nice deposition. He says he just received the drugs and you did all the selling. And Gummy gets pissed and he's like, he's lying. I didn't sell nothing. You got to believe me. I just carried the drugs from the chief to Sam. That's it. Fletch is like, sure you did. Sure you did. Kind of like dismissive.
Yeah.
20 years in prison unless you want to play ball. He starts to get up and starts to roll away. He says, where does the chief get his drugs from? And Gummy's like, I don't know. And Fletch goes, have fun. Don't bend over for the soap. And Gummy's like, Fletch, come on. It's somewhere in South America. Ding, ding, ding. Cut back to Boyd Aviation when the guys were talking about going to South America. Fletch rolls over to Sam's spot, and that's when Sam pretty much immediately recognizes him as Fletch.
I know, because I like how Gummy didn't, but then, Sam did.
Yeah, and Fletch lays it out. He says, I'm a reporter. I'm breaking the story on the drug trafficking around here, and Gummy's turning state evidence. I got proof it's the chief. Sam goes, you're going to bust the chief? He goes, I could use your help, Sam. Sam goes, I'm a slave to that son of a bitch. Busted me. Third offense. Gave me my choice. Push for him or do 15 long. Now all I get out of this is free junk. He goes, you don't have a piece of the action? He goes, no, free junk. That's
free
it.
Free junk.
Cut back to the newspaper office. Fletch is walking in with Fat Sam and Gummy.
I like how Fletch is like kind of holding his bald wig and he's like, Albert Einstein's forehead. You like it? I wanted it in a raffle.
Right. He walks over to Frank and he introduces the two of them and he brings them into Frank's office. He gives Frank pieces of paper. He says, these are their statements naming Chief Carlin as the #1 drug pusher from here to Oxnard. Let's be honest. A jury's not going to buy two drugged out guys over a police chief, but whatever.
Yeah.
He goes, I want them to have federal protection sponsored by the paper. Frank's excited. He's like, this is fantastic. This is wonderful. And Fletch says, I'm out, Frank. You lost faith in me. Frank says, Fletch, I got nervous. Come on. Fletch goes, forget it. I'm writing the story. Just hold the last 2 paragraphs until 10 o'clock, okay? Frank goes, you want an apology? Fletch goes, you're going to can me. Frank shakes his head. He's like, no, not really.
No,
Fletch goes, not really? Frank goes, I was upset, He goes, this is one hell of a story. But he goes, but about these two. And Fletch goes, don't worry about those guys. They're fine. You don't have any valuables in there. Vicky Morgan tapes or anything?
So I was like, I never picked up on that before. So I paused the movie and went down a rabbit hole on Vicky Morgan. Apparently she was the mistress of Alfred S. Bloomingdale, heir to the Bloomingdale's department stores. And she, apparently, I mean, this is like her, Vicky Morgan, like this is like like people have done like full on podcasts about like multiple seasons talking about this whole thing. But my understanding is, and I could be wrong, but my understanding is she also taped a lot of the affair and everything. So hence why he says any Vicky Morgan Vicky Morgan tapes or anything. And of course it came out like this was 85. I think all that came out like in 83, 84, which would make sense because they were probably writing this and filming this in 84. So at that point it was still pretty big at the time.
Interesting. Well, I mean, look, all of this stuff is cyclical, dude. There's a new show on FX about the LA Clippers owner who had a mistress who recorded him saying racist stuff and then she aired it out and that's how he got canned, Dude, it all comes around. It all comes
always
around.
Does, baby.
Cut to...
Oh, no. So Fletch goes to sit down to kind of start writing.
Sorry.
Yeah, I love this.
This is the button on this scene.
Yeah, so he goes to sit down and start writing something, but he takes the guy's chair next to him. The guy's like standing at his desk, but the guy doesn't know that Fletch took his chair. And the guy goes to sit down and, falls on his ass. It's the same asshole that was smiling that Frank gave the story to, So it's funny because it's actually a metaphor. Fletch is pulling the rug out from under that guy because that guy now doesn't get the story. But I just love it because it's that same asshole who is fucking smiling. And
yeah.
I just I never picked up on it. Like 100th time watching this movie, and this is like the first time I've ever noticed some of these details.
I love it.
Because I'm usually fucking high every time I watch it.
I love it. It's a hilarious moment. It's great. And I'm glad you were sober to see it.
Yes.
Cut back to
the second time. First time I was stoned.
Cut to Alan's house. Fletch is now wearing Alan's suit, and he like hops over the wall to get into the house, into the property. He walks into the garage where he sees the Jaguar, opens up the glove box, takes out the keys that are in there, opens up the trunk to the Jaguar and sees the 3 cans of gasoline, throws the keys into the trunk and closes the trunk. Now, you wouldn't pick up on this unless you heard it because you don't really see him do it. You just hear the sound of him throwing the keys in the trunk and closing it. But that's what he does. From the garage, he goes directly into Alan's office through the French doors. Looks around, sees the open safe. There's 2 metal suitcases next to it.
And the place isn't like tossed like we thought it was going to be. Too.
Not disheveled. Nope. No. He walks over to the desk, pulls the drawer open. It's empty. He's supposed to have a gun in there. Suddenly, you hear Alan say good evening. Fletch looks up from the second floor of the office, and Alan's wearing a Lakers jersey, jacket, and a baseball hat that looks just like Fletch.
I hate that fucking hat.
I know, so do I. Fletch goes, I like your outfit. Did you bring the $50,000 and the tickets? Alan says, of course. You forgot your rubber gloves. Fletch goes, you're planning on killing me, aren't you? Alan says, you catch on real quick, Mr. Nugent. Fletch says, that's a pretty hostile thing, don't you think? Alan says, well, you were going to kill me. I simply see this as self-defense. Now, if you would be so kind as to put your passport on my desk. Alan realizes at this point Fletch is wearing his suit. And he goes, where'd you get that? Fletch puts his passport on the desk, and Alan again says, where'd you get my suit, Mr. Nugent? Fletch says, the name's Fletcher. I'm a newspaper reporter. I write a column under the name Jane Doe. I love how every time he has to like say the full thing.
Yeah.
Alan says, what the hell is this? Fletch pulls the papers out of his pocket and says, read this. Alan says, I don't have time for your nonsense. Fletch says, cut the crap. Come downstairs and read this. I'm not going anywhere.
I like that. And, you know, like he's, of course, hesitant, but he's like, fuck, I'm not going anywhere. Come on.
Right.
Let's finish this.
Fletch says, unless my people hear differently, this letter goes out at midnight. Alan starts reading. Dear Mr. Boyd, Alan Stanwyck murdered me tonight. The charred remains found by the police in the Jaguar are mine, not his. Mr. Stanwyck, using my name and passport, boarded Pan Am Flight 306 on an arrival. He tends to establish residence. At this point, Fletch is like checking the suitcases that were there, opens them to look at the money, and tells Stanwyck to keep reading. Stanwyck says his legal wife, the former Sally Ann Kavanaugh. Suddenly, Gail walks in and says, don't stop, Alan. And Fletch goes, uh-oh, the missus. Alan says, what are you doing here? Gail says, I already know most of it. I just want to hear the rest from you. Fletch says, he doesn't read my stuff very well. Let me take a crack at it. He reads the rest of the letter. Sally Ann and Alan were married 8 years ago, never divorced, making Alan a bigamist, even in Utah. Stanwyck is also traveling with $3 million in cash, the result of Gail Stanwyck's sale of Boyd Aviation stock. Gail says, it's true, isn't it, to Alan? Alan's just looking at her. Fletch continues and says, Sally Ann can confirm all of this when the police pick her up at the airport Marriott. That's where she is, isn't she? That's what Fletch says to Alan. And he continues reading. By the way, Alan is a very big drug smuggler, but you can read all about it in tomorrow's paper. Sincerely, I am Fletcher. P.S. Have a nice day. Alan goes, bravo, Mr. Fletcher, bravo. And then Fletch says, you know what tipped it for me was something your wife said when we were in bed together. Alan is like,
yeah,
what?
Alan's like, okay, what now?
And Alan goes, oh, well, what was that? Fletch says, curiously, she said we have roughly the same build. From the waist up, I imagine. He makes his face, too, by the way, like his eyes kind of twitch in that moment. It's just like a little... And then Fletch says, then I figured it. You bump me off, plop me in the car, burn me up. Alan nods. What the heck? Same bone structure. Gail calls him a son of a bitch. And Alan says, but I'm not a stupid son of a bitch. Raises his gun at both of them and says, I was already prepared to commit one murder, ass face. What makes you think that I won't commit two, huh?
Whoops. I like how Fletch goes, whoops. And she's I like how she's like, no whoops. Don't say whoops.
Yeah, don't say whoops.
But notice he called him ass face. That's a direct reference to their first meeting.
Right. And Alan goes, I mean, by the time your story's published, I'll be on a beach. And I understand extradition from South America is very complicated. I'll bet for 2 murders, it's even more so. Fletch says, that thing loaded? Alan nods. Fletch says, look, if you shoot me, you're liable to lose a lot of those humanitarian awards.
That's funny.
Alan cocks the gun and says, tough shit, hop along.
Another reference to their first meeting.
Suddenly, Chief Carlin appears from behind everyone, says, greetings, everyone.
Like how Fletch goes, thank God, the police.
Yeah. Alan's like, what the hell are you doing here? Carlin says, put the gun down, Alan. I can take care of them. Gale says, I thought you had this all figured out, to Fletch. Nice going, Irwin. And Fletch goes, don't ever call me Irwin, okay? Carlin says, Fat Sam left the beach today, so did Gummy. And it began to occur to me that maybe there are some things that are happening here that I should become aware of. Alan says, look, I said I'll take care of this. It doesn't involve you. Now go home. I'll call you tomorrow. Carlin says, what, long distance? Could it have been that I overheard you say something about South America extradition? Alan calls him by his first name, Jerry. And Carlin says, Alan, you're not planning on taking that $800,000 I staked you with the next load, are you? Fletch says, looks like you two have a lot to talk over. We'll just catch the last 10 minutes of Dynasty. And they start to walk out, and Carlin shoots the gun into the air towards them. And then Alan says, Jerry, come on. You're going to have to trust me. I have a foolproof method for getting rid of this asshole, and you're jeopardizing everything. Carlin says, your foolproof way is going to land my butt in the front page while you're basking in the sun. And Fletch goes, with your money.
With your money, which is great because that little phrase was the catalyst for these two to shoot at each other.
And they do. Alan misses. Carlin does not.
That's
Alan
right.
goes down with one shot and he's dead. Gale screams. Suddenly, Carlin points his gun at both of them. They hide behind a chair. And at that moment, Fletch spots the fireplace gas handle and then turns it on.
Okay, I wasn't ever quite understanding what happened here, but I've only ever known fireplaces that just use wood. I've never known what they look. I do know they exist, like the gas fireplaces
We
too.
have one.
But yeah. Oh, is that what you guys have?
Yeah, we have one. So there's a little nozzle that you stick in a gas pipe, basically, and turn it on.
Okay.
And it lets the gas out, which is what he was doing.
Okay.
And Fletch still has the lighter from earlier. Call back to earlier.
Thank you for tying that together for me. That makes so much more sense now.
Right? And Carlin points the gun at Fletch and Gale and says, second one's going to be even more fun. And then Fletch says, go ahead, make my day. Carlin goes to shoot at them. Fletch throws the lighter at the fireplace, emitting a huge ball of fire, which hits Carlin in the face, knocking him down.
Yeah, and he says shit.
Yeah. Fletch goes for the gun, but Carlin comes to his senses and grabs it, tries to grab it as well. He gets on top of Fletch. He's looking pretty burnt up in the face, which is cool.
Yeah.
On HD, you can see that very well. I didn't remember that back in the day.
I never noticed that either, yeah.
Starts beating the shit out of Fletch, like pummeling his face. Fletch looks like he's getting just hammered hard. But then Gale from behind hits Carlin over the head with a racket and knocking him out. He lands on top of Fletch's body.
Yeah, Joe Don Baker's on top of Chevy Chase.
Yeah, and Fletch kind of says, thanks.
Yeah, with a little blood on it. Of course, he just has a little bit of blood on his mouth,
Right. Cut to the newspaper office, and there's a blow up of the newspaper cover. It says, Police Chief Carlin indicted. Pans to Frank and Fletch talking to each other, and Frank is arguing about these receipts that Fletch gave him for all the things that he needed.
Yeah,
a
for
wig,
all the makeup stuff, the wig, the
gorilla
fake bald
suit,
wig,
tennis shorts, right? The whole
yeah.
thing. And then Gale comes in through the office, and it's interesting because Larry is there, and now Gale is there. It's a little awkward.
Yeah.
And then Fletch is still talking to Frank. He's like, it's all business.
And by the way, I love that shirt that Fletch is wearing. It's this neon bamboo shirt on black. It's wonderful.
So cool. And Frank's like, a nun's habit, 6 tubes of crazy glue. And Larry goes, oh, that's personal. And I'm like, I don't think that was meant. I think it was meant to be 6 tubes of lube.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
But not crazy glue.
Yeah.
And Fletch goes, just take it out of my raise. And Frank says, you're not getting a raise. And when Gale walks in, she goes, she has plane tickets, and she goes, I think the DA would need these tickets for evidence. And Fletch says, not necessarily. In the court ruling of U.S. versus Fishbein, a man subjected to potential incineration while wearing another man's suit is entitled to $10,000 worth of airline tickets. It's an obscure ruling, but it's a very important one to me. Gale says, why don't you just say that you want to take me to Rio? And Fletch goes, well, now that's a different slant. But the thing is, we haven't really dated formally, and I always take my first dates to a Laker game. Gale says,
but I don't want to go to a Lakers game. He's like, what?
What? She goes, I don't like basketball. At
and
that
he
point,
mouths like, I don't like basketball. What?
Like, damn, this is not going to work out. It doesn't, because in part 2, he has a whole other girlfriend.
Yeah,
Then
of course.
He puts a baseball cap on that I never noticed in the decades of years this movie's been out. I never noticed what was on that baseball cap until today. What was on that baseball cap, Corey?
Dude, me too. So he puts on a baseball cap, and it's a replica of the cap that Brett Dean Stanton is wearing in Alien, and it says Nostromo. It's the name of the ship, and here's the funny thing: I'm watching it, I've never noticed it, and then my jaw drops, and then I realize that I've seen this picture online because I follow a lot of aliens, like Facebook groups and shit, and I seriously, I always thought it was photoshopped. I never fucking thought it was real. And then I notice it and I'm like, wait, this was fucking real the entire time? Like, my brain just didn't register this. And now I've gone down this rabbit hole and I can't find an answer other than, and this is the one answer because I was talking to Myra about it, other than it's just a prop. It's just a prop that and it kind of reminds me of They Live. Remember in They Live, the aliens, when they're down the sewers, like sort of that underground lair, they use a Egon's PKE meter as a communication device from Ghostbusters. And the only reason it's there is because the prop master went to the prop store and was like, oh, this is cool. I'll take this. Right. And it was, Egon's PKE meter. I think it's just a prop that they grabbed. But it's a fucking Nostromo hat.
It's a pretty awesome prop is what it is too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so cool. So cool. Side note, by the way, because I mentioned that their relationship was not going to work out probably. Julianne Phillips was the actress who's in Fletch Lives.
Okay.
I don't know if she's related to Michelle Phillips or China Phillips from Wilson Phillips, but who knows? Anyways, yeah, so I'm so, and to piggyback on what you were saying about that hat, I was blown away. I think last Exit to Nowhere, which is a clothing line in the UK, they make a replica hat of the Nostromo. I kind of want to get it.
So apparently back in 1979, I went down a rabbit hole trying to figure this out. Apparently back in 1979, a hat company made a replica of Brett's hat, from Alien. They sold it as, this like replica thing.
Awesome.
But, Zach, you've seen my Wheeler-Nicholson hoodie that I've had for like 12 years now. That's from Last Exit to Nowhere.
Yes, it is. And so is my Jack Burton hat that I've worn so much that it's faded and ripped, and we'll never give up those items.
No,
ever.
The sleeves on my fucking hoodie are all frayed and everything.
Because you suck on your sleeves.
I do not.
You chew on them. You're a chewer. Yeah, so anyways, Gale, I don't like basketball. Gale Stanwyck. Fletch goes, well, maybe that's because you don't understand basketball. You haven't been schooled in the fundamentals of pick and roll. And she goes, it sounds like a fast food chain. And there's kind of a cute back and forth banter. And he's like, it's reverse stuff. She goes, that I've done. He goes, I bet you have, you little vixen. And as they start to walk off together, Frank is looking at them lovingly. And Larry had walked off at this point, probably a little sad.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, yeah.
Or maybe not. Maybe they had an open relationship. Cut to the final scene of the movie. Fletch, voiceover. They're in Rio de Janeiro now. Gale and Fletcher on the beach.
And they really are, by the way, because so the only reason they got this scene is they talked to the studio and they said, if we come in under budget, can we finish this movie in Rio? Because they felt it was important, but also, Chevy, her, and then some of the crew. It wasn't like the full crew, but they got a free trip to Rio de Janeiro.
They sure did. And if you've seen the new Godzilla Kong movie that came out, Rio is obliterated. It's pretty funny, actually, because I say to Bodhi, I'm like, They destroyed Rio. Like, destroyed it. It's amazing.
Well,
Just
and
check it
here you can tell it's like raining. So apparently it took them like 6 days to even get this shot because they get there and it rains every day. And they're like, we can't, like, you can't leave the hotel because if there's a moment of sun, we got to go film this. So they basically had to sit in their hotels for 6 days.
Oh, yeah. The weather does not look very good there.
No, it doesn't.
But they're in Rio. And Fletch's voiceover kicks in and says, Chief Carlin was facing 20 years in the funhouse. I decided to accompany Gail to Rio and personally assist her in her grief therapy. On the beach, I explained basketball to her. By the way, 20 years for all the corruption and murder? That's a pretty light sentence.
Yeah, you think it'd be more.
Yep. So Fletch says, on the beach, I explained basketball to her, but she didn't seem to grasp it. And she cuts to Gail talking to Fletch. She's like, Fletch? Fletch goes, call me Irwin. Why do they have to bounce the ball all the time? I mean, doesn't it seem a little childish to you? Oh my gosh, this woman does not. Fletch goes,
she's not for Fletch.
No. Fletch goes, well, it may seem that, but it's called dribbling. She goes, dribbling. Okay. Come on, Gail, you're not an idiot. And Fletch says, if they don't keep bouncing the ball, they get called for traveling. Traveling. Wow.
Traveling.
Well, suddenly she's like totally naive. Well, I guess so, because she gave $3 million to her husband. So
right?
Yeah, that's what they call it if they don't bounce the ball. Cut back to Fletch's voiceover. When it came to basketball, Gail was a loss. But we had our own version of one-on-one, and she thought I was the bravest man in the world, which, of course, I am. By the way, I charged the entire vacation to Mr. Underhill's American Express card. Want the number? Then it immediately cuts into bit by bit, one way or another. The title card pops up. The end. While the credits roll, it's accompanied to stills from the movie showing Chevy in various funny images throughout. The entire credits are that way.
Yeah.
So the movie ends with shots of Chevy. It's a great moment. And that is Fletch.
Man, 5 years in the making, bro. We've been talking about this movie for so long. I think it holds up in 2024. There's very few like jokes that are timely, like of that time. I think for the most part, it's timeless. I think for the most part, the jokes can work at any moment. There's a couple references to people of the time. Sure, whatever. That's going to happen. But this is awesome, man. I love this movie. I will always love Fletch. You know, Chevy Chase fucking rules in this film. And yeah, dude, it's such a part of, I know, both of our like lexicons, you know, just all the shit that we say and, you know, subtle mannerisms here and there and everything. It's just, it all comes back to Fletch, man. It all comes back to Fletch.
It sure does. This is long time coming and a lot of fun to really like break down a movie and figure out whether I liked it just for the comedy or the actual story as well. So when I had said to Dustin that I was going to break this movie down with you and he's like, you're not going to like it, it's not going to be good, I completely disagree, actually. In fact, I loved doing this because it made me appreciate this movie and script even more than I did ever before. Like now I look at it and go, it's really competent overall. I mean, we pointed it out, all the little things that all got tied together. It was great. And
I learned shit on this time, like shit that I never knew before.
And 39 years later, I'm still laughing at some of the same jokes that I did way back when.
Dude, I mean, the spleen scene, I'll get it. It just fucking destroyed me. It destroyed me.
Notice I'm hyperventilating.
Oh, it's so good. And great breakdown, bro. This was awesome. This was one of the, I know our comedy ones are always long because the problem is you can't really omit any dialogue or anything because it's all important. But yeah, great breakdown, bro. This was so much fun. It was such a hoot. We're solidly in June right now. So what are you guys covering on $2 late fee?
Oh man. Well, this June took a different turn than what we'd expected. We actually had programming all set up for June, but then Dabney Coleman passed away towards the end of May. And it really kind of affected Dustin and I. We were like, we recognized that we really loved his career, so we wanted to pay tribute in a way we felt made sense. And we never covered Cloak and Dagger, which is turning 40 this year in August to be exact. So we covered the movie Cloak and Dagger, and then we wanted to reach out to somebody connected to Cloak and Dagger that would, have some cool stories to tell. So we reached back to a Podcasting After Dark alum in Tom Holland, who Corey and I had on the show, who talked a little bit about Cloak and Dagger back then.
I remember.
And we had him back on. He was more than happy to come on and talk about Cloak and Dagger because he absolutely loves that movie, which he expressed in the interview that Corey and I did.
Yeah.
But he offered some other kind of insight about it. I feel like it's like a part 2 conversation. And he dropped some pretty big bombshells about Fright Night, which is also turning 40 next year. But a big release is coming in July for Fright Night, and you'll have to listen to the interview to find out what that is.
Okay, you guys heard it here first.
And Tom Holland might be back on $2 Late Fee in July to talk a little bit more about that because... I don't know. He's a really cool dude. Tom Holland is 80. He'll be actually in July. Tom Holland will be 81 years old.
Damn.
And he's very like at this stage of his life in his career, he's reflecting a lot on the things that he loves, and he absolutely adores Fright Night and Cloak and Dagger. And it's weird. They there's a weird connection those two have, kind of in their stories. So
okay. Very cool. I look forward to listening to that interview. That's awesome. Yeah, we had a great time talking to him, and I know I remember he kind of lit up a little bit when you brought up Cloak and Dagger, and he kind of dove into that. I actually didn't even at the time know he was connected to Cloak and Dagger because that's still a movie I've never seen. At this point, I should just watch it with Zach. So hopefully one day
you
that
sure will
happen. But Zach and I will be discussing Beastmaster this month on the Coscarelli Factor. Actually, we've already discussed it. It's already in the queue and everything. But you'll have to check us out on Patreon to find out what we thought about that. But yeah, we're rocking Beastmaster this month on Patreon, and then next month we're going to be doing Phantasm 2, so on the Coscarelli Factor. So I'm excited about that.
Ooh, babe, we're finally getting into the meat of Coscarelli's career.
I know, but I love Kenny and Company, man, and I love Phantasm 1 and Jim the World's Greatest. There's a lot of good stuff in his early career as well, but obviously I'm very much excited to get into some of the later stuff, especially since we're barreling towards Bubba Hotep, a movie that I love there, and then John Dies at the End, a movie that I absolutely adore, and a movie that Zach and I saw together in the theater, which is really nice. So,
oh my God, we sure did.
Yeah, we at that theater that was like it's on Santa Monica Boulevard, but it's over by UCLA. It's over by the 405. It's like
the
right
New
down...
Art. I think it's the New Art.
Okay,
it's next to Cinephile.
Yeah, exactly.
So we talked about pederasts and bigamists, and now cinephiles.
There you
Cinephiles don't get any Stephen Collins references.
Moving on. So, thank you guys so much for sitting through an extra long episode of Podcasting After Dark. We really appreciate you all. And as always,
we'll catch you on the Moon River. Phew. Dark side.
I love your body, Zach.
Be sure to subscribe to Podcasting After Dark and give us a 5-star rating on iTunes. Support Podcasting After Dark on Patreon. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook at Podcasting After Dark. And visit us next time for another installment of Podcasting After Dark with Corey Stevenson and Zach Schaefer.
Hey everybody, co-host Corey here. I just wanted to take a second and say thank you to all of our Patreon members who help support the show. Each month, they get access to The Carpenter Factor, Wrap Up After Dark, and all kinds of other fun exclusive content. You can sign up for our Patreon over at patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. Again, that's patreon.com/podcastingafterdark. Other ways you can help support the show and help us grow is leaving us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. We also have a merch store where you can pick up a t-shirt or two, as well as some other fun items. You can find every link to our podcatchers, to our merch store, to Patreon, everything at podcastingafterdark.com. That's podcastingafterdark.com.